Yeah, whatever that song is.
Yeah. It's a girl, that's all I know.
I was hanging at this. It's not 99 Revolutions, no, it's a diff, but it's like same era kind of.
Yeah.
Hanging at the something. I don't know what song that is.
That's what the intro always made me think of, though.
We're starting the podcast. I think we start the podcast with us trying to remember what the theme song reminds us of.
There's somebody out there who definitely knows what song
that's
that
like
is.
That's a famous song. We all started singing along at the same
How
time.
do all three? But I don't even know enough of it to like Google the lyrics.
No.
Something. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll find out what it is.
Okay.
Now it's just going to be stuck in your head.
Yeah. All right. Welcome to the Damaged Goods podcast. I am your hostess, Jess Robert, or Jessica Robert is my full legal name. I was actually named after the little girl who got stuck in the well in 1987. Did you know
in
that?
case someone wants to take your identity, make sure you give them your full name.
Yeah.
well, because Jess wasn't the name of the girl who got stuck in the well. It was Jessica. So when I was following it up with that fact, I wanted to make sure that it made sense.
I love it.
Were you named after anybody?
I was named after my nonno, which is Italian for grandfather. And then my middle name, which I won't give because my identity cannot be stolen. I just don't have the time for that. So my middle name is after my other grandfather. So I'm named after my two grandfathers in a very classic patriarchy type way.
So if you're tuning in for the first time, this is Ill Vibe.
Where have you been?
Yeah, where have you been? This is our 14th episode.
It is our 14th. We're getting old. What were you doing at 14 years old? Were you like, was this goth years for you?
Yes.
So our podcast is just entering its goth years.
Yeah, exactly.
See, funny enough, I was in the same stage at 14.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Did
I'm
you
so intrigued
wear
by goth people.
white contacts or fangs?
Oh, no, never went that far. But definitely there was some fishnets involved.
Amazing. Big thanks as always to lyricvids.com, the web's #1 lyric video animation company. Our exciting guest today is a friend of ours. He's a veteran in the music industry, the awesome Andy Hawke.
Well, hello.
Yeah.
Yay.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we kept the intro somewhat vague because I don't know what your new job title is ever since you broke up with me.
Yeah.
And you've done a lot. And I think that more than like saying like here on behalf of or any bullshit like that, it's you've been this cool music industry force in my life and our life for a little while, and you've got a long story before that, and you've got a super bright future in front of you where you are, and I think you're going to be the kind of guy who's going to be in the game for a long time. You're going to be like that old guy who walks in and they're like, that's Andy.
I know. I wrote the word
Hawke.
veteran, and I'm like, I feel like he's like young to be called a veteran, but I still feel like you're a veteran, you know? I feel like it worked.
Yeah, that's kind of when you hear that word, you think somebody that's like, you almost think the word, like a war veteran.
Yeah.
Like, they've seen some shit.
Yeah. I feel like you've seen some shit.
No, it's well, thanks for that, and I hope that the bright future thing comes to fruition, because that's what we're here for, right? Go all in on something, and you hope it pays out. But yeah, it's been a long trip, a long journey. I've been through a lot of different parts of the music business, but I always like to think of myself as that I'm always trying to get to the next level, so you never kind of feel complacent or like, okay, I'm nice and cozy here, I can just chill. Like, I'm always trying to move forward with everything in whatever way I can.
The music business isn't one where you can kind of sit for very long.
Exactly.
And I think there are probably some where you can a bit more. If you sell a product in a very straightforward way, you can be a little bit more stagnant. Although, like, we've seen companies in the city where it's like, oh, they better keep up, otherwise you're gonna quick. Amazon's gonna eat you real quick, son.
Yeah,
Bezos is coming for your paycheck, son.
Yeah, that's not far off. And it's funny enough, the office building that I'm in now, Amazon's actually in the same building. So yeah, they got 2 floors in a giant building.
We're gonna keep going a little bit more on the mic.
Yeah.
Quiet one,
Do you want to share that Amazon fact?
Yeah. Just because I saved it. Was going to talk about it later, but Bezos just passed 150 billion, which makes him the single richest person since 1982.
Damn.
I don't know who the 82 guy was. And on Twitter, somebody was quick to be like, yeah, well, Rockefeller was worth 400 billion if you account for inflation for like 1913 or whatever,
Right.
whatever.
Yeah.
But the point is, in modern history, in the game that we all play, this motherfucker went to 150 billion.
That's stacked.
Isn't that crazy?
I can't even fathom that, like, having that much amount of money in my possession.
And just to bring it back to what we were talking about, what's interesting about Amazon, like the only thing I care about Amazon, other than like it's great and we're Prime customers, I fuck with it, is it was a bookstore, bro.
Yeah.
Like you can read on an article the order of all of their what's it like? What's the word I'm looking for? Mission statements for the company. And the first mission statement is to provide the world with books. And then it changes to provide the world with books and other similar things they need. And then it was provide the world with the things they need. And then it's just like it's starting to get further and further away from books and more into just like connecting people with things they want to spend their money on and taking some of that money. It's like they've kind of just gotten more and more.
Is that their slogan?
No, but it really does. Like it becomes more and more generic. Where all they really do is provide a connection and make the world a better place.
Yeah.
It's like,
Speaking of like constantly moving up, totally. They're one of the companies who obviously never had rules with what they're allowed and not allowed to do. It's like they've just kind of grown as the demand has grown.
And I'm not a tech nerd like that to know if like Bezos has been there since the beginning, but now I kind of want to know. I might even like on my own time do a little Bezos research because I'm curious. Like everyone knows about Steve Jobs. You know all these stories.
Like he has, but I could be that I'm not really basing that
He's
on
not
anything.
new to the company, but I wonder, is he the guy who was like once upon a time like, we're not just going to be books. I have a dream that we sell everything.
Yeah.
And we're going to have drones dropping things off in people's houses. And
did they do that in Canada?
not yet.
I didn't think so.
I think Jess and I talk about our life as this podcast because we talk constantly about this stuff.
Yeah.
But the issue is laws. Like the technology exists for all of this stuff, but that's why these companies spend so much money lobbying because it's like, yeah, it's illegal to do that right now.
Right.
And so I think they're just trying to get the permission. Just like with Uber, everybody, it's like, hey, you could do it.
Self-driving cars.
Will the cities let you do it?
Yeah, I've been hearing we're only like a couple years away from fully automated.
Yeah, me and Anthony had an argument about that recently because he thinks we're closer than I do.
We're close.
I feel like there's so much red tape and that we keep moving backwards with any type of. Remember, there was like that accident recently that killed a person. So it's like, to me, that's going to create so much more red tape. So I don't know. I can't see it happening in the next like 3 or 4 years, but that's what you were saying.
The only
right?
reason I think it will is because we're already there technology-wise. It's not a matter of like getting over a line technology-wise.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
It's just
I understand that it
regulations.
exists.
So, yeah, it won't be not next year because things don't move that quickly in government, but they're going to start feeling the pressure. It's like,
and what about
it works? It's safer. The data is universal. Even the companies competing with each other, the data is universal.
But what about like I guess the. Okay, so what I was gonna say was, what about like how GM will be fucking in good with the prime minister, and then because whatever, all these fancy things they like, all these politics words. But yeah, so I was thinking they wouldn't even allow self-driving cars to be a thing. But I guess these companies are also going to build the self-driving cars in theory, right?
Yeah. Well, some of them will.
Yeah.
And some of the automotive companies are already doing that. Like it's not in like Ford has no reason to not want self-driving cars.
Right.
They're not going to sell less cars. I mean, in theory, I guess if they're crashing less, but yeah, they're not going to be like, well, we want more cars to crash. So,
well, and I know that some of the test cars that they've had out on the road, there's been a couple accidents, and some people are like, well, look, it's broken, but it's like, yeah, okay, that's one crash, and they're still trying out, the bugs
one,
and stuff.
I can't remember which company it is. I'm going to say the Tesla one, but one of the main companies, or maybe it's the Google car, I can't recall which. They had something like 2 million miles, no accidents.
Right.
And then the first accident was because the guy took the car out of auto drive and crashed it. That was the first big one. The one that
so that shouldn't even count.
Yeah, the reason why the recent one is so important is because it's one of the first or the first where the car did it.
It's a
Right.
glitch.
The car glitched and killed somebody, and it's just like, and this is, I don't know, we got to make sure that we do a really clever come back around to what we want to talk about here.
It's okay.
It'll all
we
wrap
derailed
up
quickly
nicely.
this
Well,
time. That's
yeah,
okay.
It's okay. Yeah, usually it takes us another half hour before we get this far off
I
track.
know.
But what we need to get to as a civilization is we look at the numbers. Do we agree the numbers are real? And if we think they're real, like not just like made up by some company to like convince us to buy something, then we need to go with that. And the numbers are, it's way safer for a robot to drive you home than you.
Yeah.
It's way safer. Not even a little. If it was 50% safer, I'd probably still do it. But it's like 500% safer.
Right.
So it's like, yeah, it is going to feel weird when your aunt gets hit by a self-driving car. We're all going to feel weird about it. But your aunt proverbially gets hit by people every day.
Well, and drunk driving and all that craziness.
Every day. Now, maybe you don't know that person because that drunk driver hit somebody in the neighboring town.
Yeah.
But that's where we kind of have to exist as a population and go, well, do we want more of our kids to be alive? So, yes, one of our kids might get hit by a self-driving car in the population, but then there's going to be 1,300 that didn't get hit by drunk dads.
Yeah.
Totally.
You know?
Well, I think a big thing is just people feel like it's just giving up a freedom to machines, and it's like robots, taking over everything, sort of thing.
And I think that's a worthy fear. I think that's more of like a philosophical fear. Like, I can't say anything about that. If you feel weird about robots taking over, you sort of should.
Did you listen to or I guess it would be the one we just put out?
Yeah, so we put it up today. Andy hasn't had a chance.
That's right.
Thank you very much for listening, by the way.
No, no problem.
Because Andy gives me shit for things we say on the podcast all the time.
I love it.
Should we say how we know him? Let's not make the mistake we made last time with Shayla.
Yes,
where we didn't properly introduce.
I have everything. So first of all, if you want to check Andy out, you can do so at Echelon Above.
Echelons Above.
Echelons Above.
Yeah.
So I'm going to spell that because I didn't know. ECHELONS and then above, spelled the normal way.
Yeah.
And how do we meet Andy? Because I could tell the story, but I'm the least useful in this particular story.
Which is funny, isn't it?
Because I wasn't there.
So basically, Maestro Fresh West, and if you're Canadian, you definitely know who that is. If you're American and you're listening, he's basically...
Let your backbone slide.
Yeah. So he's an OG in the rap game and is kind of in the same circle as Ill Vibe and a lot of... people who
he's a hero of mine, but
yes.
I suppose there's a circle.
But I mean, but your manager is also his manager at one point,
now,
and
at the time though it was a bit looser. I'm just trying to say at the time. At the time, it was still Maestro Fresh West, so we'd only worked with once or twice.
Yes, and he was having a private listening party, which I usually would think that would be like a small affair. Like, I don't know. When I heard like private listening party, I was just like, oh, it's probably going to be, maybe like 50 people at a small bar where, there's drinks or whatever. And Anthony couldn't go. Do you remember what you were doing?
That was back when I was shooting music videos full time.
Yes.
And those are long hours. So I think what happened was day before he's like, hey, King, forgot to invite you to this party tomorrow. Let me know if you want to come through. And I was like, babe, we need to get in with Wes.
Yeah.
He's like the man.
Yeah.
And I can't go. And now it seems obvious that you might go. But back then, that was more of like a, do you want to go? Is that weird to send you?
Yeah, and
but
I was
you were
like,
down, yeah.
And I knew there'd be a couple people I knew there, so I was like, yeah, no problem, I'll go or whatever. So I get there, and it's like this. What was it? Like, was it like a?
It was a
banquet
charity
hall.
It was a charity event in like it. The outside looked like an old movie theater, but then as you go in, it was kind of like a ballroom sort of setting.
Yeah,
and it
totally.
probably held about 500 people, and it was packed.
And what did we hear on the way in? That people were paying like $100 to get in, like per ticket or something for charity.
Oh, and it was a silent auction, and some of the I took a look at some of the paintings and things, and they were going for like 10 grand, and like people were dropping
it was
a lot
like
of money on these things.
it wasn't what I was expecting when I heard like, oh, private listening party.
I think it was run by like the neighborhood association for that area of the city.
Yeah,
or something
totally.
Like that. It was like a fundraiser for the neighborhood association.
Like the BIA.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm old enough to know what a BIA is.
So it was a super awesome event. I think there was some other artists there, and then Maestro performed, and everybody was really excited. And I was way underdressed.
Me too.
Everybody was like in suits and stuff. And so so that's where I met Andy, and we just started talking. We were like eating free pizza and just like
AAA was there.
AAA was there.
AAA Beats, one of my favorite producers here in Canada.
Well, that's how it actually initially first happened. Because like I went to the event with at the time my coworker Tony Tarleton. The two of us went because we were working with Maestro at the time. I was working at a company, Fontana North.
Yep.
And Maestro was one of the accounts that I was dealing with, and I would handle all of his releases and all that sort of stuff. And you're right, he was just about to put out his new record, and he was playing some of the songs live at this event. And before he got on stage, they were playing the rest of the record just like as background music. Mm-hmm. And so Tony and I last minute decided to go because same sort of thing. We kind of got a last minute heads up from him, and we're like, okay, well let's go over. We just drove right from the office to over there. So I was kind of looking how I had to look now while people were tucked up. And like I didn't know many people there either. And then I bumped into Andrew Andreshev, I believe is how you say his last name. AAA.
Wow, yeah.
AAA Beats.
Wow, great pronunciation on his last name.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard his last name before.
I've seen it written on socials, but he's, I believe, like, I don't know if it's Russian, but he's from that part of the world.
He's Ukraine.
No, same thing.
Ukrainian.
Well, I just mean because it's right close, and Russia keeps like invading, so I was more making a political joke.
Yeah.
You don't get it, Jess. Sorry.
Well, and when this happened, this must have been 2014, 15, something like that.
Yeah.
Sometime around there.
It would have been the summer of 2015.
Yeah. Okay. So rewinding from that, back in 2009, I went to Trebas Institute, and in my class was AAA.
Cool.
We were in the same class together during that time. It was just a quick 1-year course, but it only like the course that I took was entertainment management, and it started with like 15 people. By the end of the semester, there was only 8.
Wow.
So like a lot of people dropped out, and AAA was one of the ones that stuck it through the whole way.
Nice.
And I knew he was going to do some cool stuff. The guy's he's a genius.
Yeah.
So we kind of stayed in contact, but it's one of those things where you stay in contact with people, but you never really hear from them. That's just the way it goes these days. But when you bump into them, it's always it's all love, right?
Of course.
So I saw him, and you were hanging out with AAA, and then he introduced you to myself and Tony, and then I think he took off. Oh, and there was somebody else with him too, another rapper that he was hanging with. I can't remember.
Dio
who.
was there somewhere too, but then I know what you're talking about. I know that we have like pictures posted on Facebook. I could go find out who it was.
But yeah, it was AAA, this other rapper, and you, and then
maybe
Tony
Johnny
and I.
Dilemma. He was working with Dilemma a lot back then. But anyways,
That might have been.
Anyways,
I can't recall.
I just had to try to think.
Sounds
of it,
right, but I don't want to say.
But then after AAA did the intro amongst us all, he took off, and then you were hanging out with Tony and I, and then that's when they busted out in this fancy kind of tuxedo situation. All of a sudden, there was a bunch of pizzas that showed up, so we just started eating pizza all night.
And you
just
guys are
talking
eating
about
pizza.
Yeah.
And there's a line that's coming that's really important because there's a sentence I don't know if it's exactly how it was said, but this is how it was said to me, and it's been burned in my mind ever since.
Yeah.
Because I remember you saying it to me that night. I remember telling my friends exactly. I don't know, guys. This is exactly what Jess said. And the line was.
Hopefully, I said it right.
This is the line.
I think I know the one you're talking about.
The line, as I recall, is this: like, I thought Ill Vibe already had a deal. If he doesn't, or if he didn't, we'd take him, or something like that.
It wasn't that definitive.
But it was the idea.
But it was like,
I thought he had a deal,
Yeah.
or we would be interested in signing him, or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, Jess, you told him I don't, right? You told him I don't have a deal, right?
I did good. I did good.
I do not have a deal, right? Because it's like I was drowning. That was in a moment where I had considered giving up, and I was still going quite hard. But in my head, I'm like, if we don't get traction soon, I need to adjust my plans, you know what I mean?
For sure.
Yeah.
And so it was a lot of traction really fast from a really unexpected source. This party that you went to.
For sure.
Well, yeah, and before this event happened, I can't remember how your name came across my desk in whatever fashion. I think it was a friend. Like, it might have even been Brandon or somebody.
We know enough similar people, and I was putting a lot of work in around that time, trying for all of my ability. We just did a whole podcast with Shayla about how hard I was working at that time in my life. So you would probably heard some ripples from 2 or 3 people that this guy who's busting
Well, and
his
I remember
ass over
checking you out online, and like I remember seeing, I can't even remember the name of it, but there was a song that you did with a bunch of other people. It was like a collab video, and in the video there was it was like a Wizard of Oz theme, I think it was.
Yeah, that's Waiting for Dorothy.
That's it. Yeah.
With Tynan and Nucky.
That was the first stuff I ever heard from you.
Yeah.
When I looked you up and I saw that video, and then I went to your socials, and then I remember going to your Facebook and seeing record label Heavy Ox Recordings.
Yes.
I'm like, okay, he's already got something. I didn't look into Heavy Ox.
Yeah,
I just
of course.
it's like, all right, I'm moving on. I'm okay, he's got something.
Looking elsewhere. Yeah.
I'm on to the next thing. So that's when we just started chatting after AAA took off. She brought up that she's dating this rapper Ill Vibe, and I'm like, oh, I know Ill Vibe. I've heard that name before. And then I said,
fucking great day.
I remember saying, like, doesn't he already have a deal? And you perked up immediately, like, no, he doesn't. No.
There you go.
You said something. This is the thing I keep saying on our podcast. We're not trying to be like a heavy information source, but occasionally someone says something gold, and I'm like, let's make a note. If you're listening, this is good info. You saying you looked at my socials and saw a record label and was like, he's already signed. Do you know how many artists list everything like they've got their whole team in place already? They don't need anything.
Yeah.
It's like they brand themselves as like, we need nothing. I go, look at my fucking team over here, and it's like, okay, you don't need anything, peace. And like, meanwhile, A&Rs could potentially be like walking by, being like, oh, someone's already repping you. Okay, good. It's like, nobody ever suggested to me the idea that you should be somewhat advertising that you're available. You know what I mean? Like, and I think if I was young, that would be at least a take I might want to know.
Yeah.
Well, it's a fine line too, because you know it's all about how you present it, because you don't want to seem like, if you do have a team, you got to be waving their flag as well
and give them love and all that.
100%. Yeah. But if you're also independent, you're just like, independent, sign me. That's just a little bit. That's a turnoff as well.
Yeah,
you know?
for sure.
Yeah. Shout out my team, and then it's like a separate post where it's like, but we're seeking
Exactly.
distribution. You can
It's
say
all
it in the
about
right
how you
words.
frame
It's
it.
not like,
Yeah.
we're dying out here. Hashtag we're dying out here on all their posts. But anyways, I thought that was useful. 'Cause even to this moment, I didn't know that. I hadn't thought of that being a thing.
Yeah.
I think the even bigger takeaway is putting yourself at these events where you can meet people like this.
100%.
And just having those conversations.
Our whole life has been made by being places, and even like when we give shout outs to people, like we met those people at a place and then they took us to another place and then introduced you to new people. So it all starts with a chain reaction of putting yourself in a room with people who do what you want to do.
Yeah.
And in fact, I was writing down things I wanted to talk to Andy about today, and so many of them come back to choosing your own destiny, because we just hung out at a park yesterday. We don't normally do that as a day before a podcast, but we all hung out at a park yesterday. And even just chatting about what you've been up to, I'm like, the theme here is like, choose your own adventure, bruh. Like, what do you want to do? Start painting by color, and before you know it, you're kind of in that world, you know? And you being willing to go to that party and being like, yeah, I could do that. I could go represent our little company, our little budding company here at this event. So many people I've been in relationships with or business relationships with, and even me at my worst, I'm pretty good now, but at my worst, like, you know what? There's nothing there.
Yeah, you just kind
So
of
easy,
feel
but
it.
there's nothing there. Like, and I love Wes. Wes is the man, but you could just as easily go, it's an older rapper. I'm going to go to his event and say hi to him. I'm not feeling it.
Yeah. You're like, what's the point? I know what it's going to
It
be
didn't
like.
say come get a record deal on the flyer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It didn't say you're going to bump into friends of friends who are going to help change your life on the flyer.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. Look at us inspiring people while we get drunk.
Damn, look at that. It's magical, man. It's the magic of the pineapple.
It is the magic of the pineapple. You're going to fuck around and get invited every episode. You say shit like that.
Well, if I remember, like, the path from there, and jump in if I'm missing anything, but I remember, like, we had a great hang that night, and we just, had a good time, ate a bunch of pizza and chilled, and didn't really even talk much about you. Like, it came up.
Yeah, that's
and,
what she said too. That it kind of was like, hey, we didn't really go into it, but
Yeah, and we just kind of glossed over it. And then, but I remember when we were saying goodbye, I remember giving you my card and just saying, like, I think you brought up, like, Ilva, would love to meet you sometime. Like, yeah, sure, let's jump on a phone call sometime. And, or it was something just like, innocuous like that.
Long story short, Jess knows how to play it cool.
killed it, babe. I really appreciate it. And I remember meeting with you and Tony, and I was nervous.
Well, but before that, though, you and I had probably like an hour and a half long phone call.
I remember the phone call. I was like, I'm good on the phone. I'm a talker. I have a fucking podcast. I'm good on the phone. And I had been putting work in for long enough that I just sort of felt like I've earned it. Now, whether they feel it's useful to them or like valuable, that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
But, like, I've done all of the things that you would do to at least ask for this. Like, be like, hey, would y'all be interested? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I felt pretty good about that. But man, there's such like, for somebody who like does the things I love to do so frequently, when I really want something, bro, I get nervous. I came to that meeting like sweating, and it's so funny to think that like now we're casual friends, and I could call you up and be like, here's what I'm working on. What are your 2 cents? Like, we're people like, it's not intense like that. But when you don't know the person, I was more nervous than for like a first date. Because for a first date, there's sort of a lot of fish in the sea, but there's not a lot of fish in the sea saying like, hey, I would sign Illy.
Yeah.
Like there's not like, even no matter how good you are, there's not a lot of fish in the sea being like, yeah, I'd sign you.
Well,
We get behind your dream.
See, it was tough for me too, because like at the time with Fontana, like we dealt with a lot of hip hop and a lot of established stuff. Like, and
You're doing a lot of hip hop then?
yeah, a lot.
Interesting.
There was
Urbnet was more active back then.
Urbnet
right?
was very active back
Yeah.
then. We at the time we were dealing with Rhyme Sayers and their whole collective.
Of course, I still I don't have anymore. For a long time, I had a Rhyme Sayers T-shirt from like my youth. Like, that was the truth. Yeah.
And one of the biggest ones that I'm still such a big fan of is Strange Music and Tech Nine and his whole crew and RBC Records.
Yeah,
which
I remember
their
when I came on,
affiliates.
you were super proud because Tech was really active at the moment.
Oh, yeah,
You guys were putting out big numbers for him.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like with a lot of these, when I say these kind of artist names, a lot of people are like, oh, so you dealt directly with Tech? And it's like, no, I didn't.
that way.
I didn't. Yeah, exactly. It's like, it's a deal. Like Strange Music works with RBC Records. RBC Records works with Ingrooves in America. Ingrooves is the sister company to Fontana North in Canada.
Cool. So I didn't even know
it's
that
like,
was the relationship.
It's a relationship of a relationship of a relationship. And then I was just the one in Canada that had to make sure that all the releases were on point and we were checking
really
all the
is
boxes.
It's a distribution deal.
Yeah.
And it's like, now, like, I know what that is now. And it's, man, so many things in my life are like this. Even just I said with you, even the word distribution deal, before I got far enough into the tunnel to know what I was looking at, the words sound Japanese to you. You're like, well, what does that mean? And I mean, if you break it down, you think you would know what that means, but looking from the outside looking in, I was like, you don't really know where the lines are. who are those people? Are they like suits? Are they, where would I find them? It's like, you guys are the people behind the curtain in a lot of ways. When you're the creative in the studio, writing and practicing and doing all of those things, and then someone goes like, what next? In your head, the word distribution deal flies. It's just like, you don't know where, it's like fleeting. You don't know where to go. There's no application website to go apply for them. And so it was learning as I went. And so that's one of the things that I've never even really, I think, thought about, and certainly not voiced to you, is to thank you for the level of education you gave me during the release of Fire Breather, because I'm so widely complimented for knowing what I'm doing. And you remember me in 2015. I didn't. Well, I was working hard, but I didn't know what to do in terms of professional releases.
Well, the thing that jumped out at me right away is you were very aware of what you didn't know. Mm-hmm. Like, you had already painted it into the corner of, I know all of this. But this is the thing I don't.
Over here, I don't
and like
know. Yeah.
The fact that you were so aware of that. Bro. But that's important. Yeah. It showed me right away that, okay, this guy's not just like, he's not sitting around doing nothing. He's putting in work and doing everything he can to learn as much as you possibly can, and then I can help fill in the rest of this stuff.
And you did, bro. You taught me so many things I didn't know, and it's not just that you gave me information, but having somebody who's confident and cares about you giving that information, I don't have to like second guess that, like, am I getting good info here? Like, I've got somebody who cares about me and they're in the system doing this every day, and they say this is the way to go. And just the confidence, because sometimes, when you're coming up, someone goes, hey, CD Baby's better than TuneCore. And you go, what's that based on? Is that true?
Yeah, why?
And nobody ever goes, well, let me break it down for you. Here's a PowerPoint. It's just someone tells you at a show somewhere, and you're like, whoa, am I fucking up using CD Baby or whatever the case? This is one of a million cases.
Yeah.
And you just don't feel confident in any of your moves. Even when I started talking to young guys about music videos, I think no one ever told them that branding was important. It's confidently, hey, heads up. Probably should build that brand a little bit and like get rid of those pixelated photos and replace them with some cool music. It's like, you were that guy to me with so many things where it's like, hey, I don't know these things. And you're like, well, confidently, here's 3 things you should think about.
Yeah. And that's where I brought up like all the other hip hop artists that we were working with at the time and stuff that I love it. Like, to me, hip hop's one of my favorite genres, and working on all these names that I had listened to for many years, it was a thrilling for me because I love working with artists. I love just the whole nature of releasing music and doing it. It's like, I'm such a fan in so many ways as I'm working in the music side of it. But to me, all those things that I was dealing with, the Tech Nines and things like that, those were deals that were already in place before I got hired at the company. And I came in and had a passion for that kind of genre of music. So I kind of worked my way into the position of being the one responsible for handling those releases over time. But there was always this thing in my mind as, wearing the A&R hat of, I want to find my own hip hop act.
Work admin for a developed artist. You want to develop someone to become that guy.
100%. So that's where I was already, like, Maestro was one that, again, was already a deal that was in place before I started there, but him and I bonded so quickly and became just close friends. And
Canadian hip hop is a bit smaller, so he speaks so highly of you because you did have a hand in his career. Canadian hip hop's a bit smaller until we're not talking OVO, XO stuff.
Yeah.
Even though he's established, he's the OG of the country.
He's the godfather of Canadian hip hop.
He still speaks highly of you, of being like helpful in his success for that window, right? Yeah. Because it's a long game.
Well, yeah. When I saw him at the Junos that just passed, he leaned up to me and gave me a hug, and he's like, "Man, I still wish you were on my team." And it was like, I love you, Maestro.
Okay, so
but the point I was trying to get to, is that. With all these different accounts that were already there, stuff that I loved and things I wanted to chase, it was a goal of mine to find my own hip hop act in whatever way and bring that into the fold, and then have me work it from the ground up and plug it into the system that was already there that all these other artists were already plugged into. So then when I met Jess and things started rolling with you, at that time I'd already gone down the path with a few different things that were just like, it looks kind of good on the outside, but then after you started talking to somebody, you're like, oh,
especially with hip hop,
this is going to be tough.
I bet more than other genres, there's more. I could think of probably a more intelligent way of saying it, but let's just use the funny way of saying it, like more frontin', where it's just like, hey, we're ready, we're doing all the things, we're ready to move, like all our ducks in a row, and then you get close and it's like, bro,
peel the hood back.
None of your ducks are in a row. You've not done any of the things. The only thing you've done is sort of put up the facade like one of those old country western buildings. And the minute you open the door, you're like, Heads up, there's nothing in here, yo.
Well, and that's why I was nervous.
I don't know if you noticed, but there's no rest of the building.
That's why I was nervous getting on that first phone call with you, because that's what had
not
happened
bro.
a few times.
I'm a shower and approver. And these days, because I'm an old man now, when I meet people at events and I'm networking, I was at New School Rules and I was networking with this festival booker in the Netherlands who hasn't messaged me back in a month, and I'm getting kind of pissed off about it. But anyways, I was like, he's like, make sure you follow up with me. Some people don't. And then Henka, who runs that event, walked by. I'm like, Henka, can you tell this guy about my follow-up skills? And she's looked at me, she's like, he'll fucking follow up. It's like, yeah, I mean, it's so funny, man. If I could go back and talk to young me, and we're about to talk about young you in a second, because I think it's interesting where you decided to go. That's the thing I wish I could tell me to do earlier. Be the most reliable person in the business and just watch how that skyrockets you. Because people are just like always stressing out whatever it is, you know, with DO's Northern Power Summit event or anything. It's like he's stressing. He wants it to be big. There's going to be somebody who no shows on day of. That's how things go.
It's the way it
and
goes.
if you're always the guy who's there and you're always the guy who over delivers on the thing you said you were going to do, and you just keep improving and trying to grow as whatever you are, whether it's a manager, A&R, artist, producer, DJ, you grow and you're reliable.
Yeah.
Those two things, kind of the other 98 things will follow suit.
Yeah. And also, we talk about this a lot, but if it comes down, so let's say you're trying to book a festival or whatever, and it's between you and some other guy, and you're great at answering emails, and you're both equal talent, let's say, and you're great at answering emails, answer right away, or super easy to work with, and this guy, like, never doesn't really answer emails. It's like pulling teeth to get him to whatever. It's like, they're going to pick you. You know what I mean? Like, everybody wants their job to be easier.
You've been more in a gatekeeper role than either of us ever have been. Or would you agree with that? If there's like two people you're dealing with and one of them is easier to deal with, how often does that weigh into the, like, even in your room, be like, guys, this band is always ready to go?
It definitely is a big factor, but then at the end of the day, it always comes back to the music. Like, even if there's that thing,
I guess rarely are they exact equals of talent.
it's very rare. Yeah.
That was the strange example that I was trying
but
to give.
over time, it happens in small percentages.
Yeah, of course. But it's, again, like, there's some people out there that are just terrible at answering emails, terrible at answering phone calls, but you're like, your music is so damn good. Like, I have to.
So you keep trying.
Yeah.
But are those people who are like, because I have recently come into the opinion that, and it's from going to so many music events, that talent is less rare than I thought it was.
Yeah, that's very accurate.
So more and more I go, you know what? I just did this with a deal I thought I was going to make happen with an international act. And like, if you can't handle even this, I'll move. Because I know in 6 weeks or 6 months, I'll find someone else I love.
Yeah.
That's how this game is. There's a trillion of us out here.
100%.
You know what I mean? And so it's like, okay, if you're not easy to just have in my world, no sweat. I kind of got a couple things already. I'll wait for the next one. Yeah. And I think if that's how the whole music biz works. I think there's just a valuable lesson. I don't even know exactly what that is. Just to be aware that everyone has a half full plate and they're just waiting for somebody who's perfect to fit into that mix.
Well, I guess the lesson is that talent alone won't do it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? There's a lot of talent out there, so talent alone won't get you there.
Talent plus buzz, you probably can't be an asshole.
Yeah.
Because if you're talented and you have a fan base, those people seem to be able
I'd
to get away
still
with
say be
being an
careful
asshole.
though.
No,
I'd still say that's rolling the dice.
Do you know what quote I heard?
Like,
and I heard it from, I can't remember her name right now, but it's a hip hop lady on Twitter who's very, very famous, and I can't remember her actual name right now. She writes books about managing in hip hop. But she just said, if you're an asshole, they'll put you on every bill. They'll pay you every dollar. It won't affect a thing until you miss.
That's good.
You know what I mean? It's like you have a miss, and they're going to be like, Ill Vibes over. You guys hear that trash album versus you miss and being like, it was a misstep. Next one's gonna be crazy because you've always been a positive force, and they want you the positive force to continue.
Yeah, they want you to.
They're not going to be waiting for you to fall. You know, and I think. I'm both of those things. I'm an asshole, and I think I'm pretty humble when it matters. And so this is a lesson for myself and for the.
When I think so much, there's a big difference too when you're talking about promoters and bookers in the like live performance side of things as opposed to like label or distro side. There's a lot of similarities in what those people look for in terms of who they're going to work with and things like that. But especially when it comes to the performance side of it, it's much more of a, if you're fucking around, there's a lineup of people that I can get to fill this venue.
Yes.
And it's like, I don't need to deal with your shit. You're gone now.
So
and
the value gap is different on the live side, where it's even more important that you are cool to deal with the promoters.
I would definitely say so.
Interesting.
And that's just from my experience and some of the promoters and agents and people that I've dealt with, where they don't put their tolerance for bullshit is so
Is that
small.
because there's more acts than, like, let's call them stage nights, like stages and nights of the week that are open? There's just there's way more acts than there is quality stage nights.
That's pretty accurate, and I think that it goes back to like what you just said. Is like talent is not that rare anymore.
Yeah.
Everybody
and
is
it's cumulative. All of the bands from 2014 didn't break up.
Yeah.
Some of them did, but most of them are still here. And the ones from 2012, more of them broke up, but some of them are still here.
Yeah.
And it's like, you forget that these are cumulative. There's like a new artist comes out, you love them, you're like, yeah, every day there's one of those.
Well, yeah, and that's like some of these promoters are getting hit up by artists, like dozens of artists to play the same night in the city. It's like they just have to pick and choose and try to fit in the rest of wherever they can. Where it's
That saturation is real. Every time I've ever made a connect that mattered, I call them people who won't answer their emails. It's like a thing I say where I'm like, I met Fat Philly out in Europe. He's a major promoter for a festival. He's Croatia's #1 hip hop DJ. He's just like a plug for a part of the world, right?
Yeah.
Fat Philly, you cannot reach him by email because he's just getting demos every day. Every day a demo lands, so you're not gonna reach them that way. And even instead of just being defeated by that, you just have to go, well, that's a fact about life I know now. That people on the receiving end are not reachable by trying to contact them by normal means. So bringing it back to what you said, the answer is, where does Philly hang out? And I mean, go to his house. I mean, go to. But I mean, like, for example, if he's promotes at a certain bar in town. Let's say he's always, for example, let's use Fat Philly as an example because he wouldn't mind. He goes to New York City every year because New York City is a big part of his business. And there's a bar he spins at. So if you live in New York and you're trying to get on Fresh Island Fest or even driving distance from New York, I would go try to meet him when he's spinning at a bar that holds 200 people.
Yeah, because then you have a face-to-face interaction.
Buy him a beer and don't be creepy, but be like, I'm a big fan of your DJ shit. I drove in to see this. I'm also an artist. I'd love to rock your festival. Just wanted to put that out there.
Yeah.
You've accomplished what 8,000 artists are trying to do by email with the price of a beer.
Yeah, for sure.
I couldn't have said it better. Like, you gotta find your way in, and email is, even myself, man, I try to stay up on emails as hard as I can, but like I'm getting hit with like submissions, demo submissions, sign my band. I get dozens of those a day.
Right.
And it's like,
because that's what you do in your current position, right? You basically run like quote unquote label side of the business. We've been purposely vague, but that's what you do.
Well, okay. My official title is that I'm a manager of A&R for Olé Label Group.
Okay, cool.
So like Olé is known for being a massive publishing company, but they also have a label division.
And that means, just so I understand too, those are artists that you guys are actively more involved with. Like you're helping promote these bands, etc.
Yeah.
Versus on the publishing side, it's more about facilitation.
Publishing side is more about compositions, songwriting, those sort of creating songs.
But you're not promoting the acts necessarily on that side as much as you are.
It's more about the writers.
That's right.
Yeah, the publishing world is all about the writer. It's not so much about the artist. And then it's about getting your writer's songs cut by big name artists. That's a big part of it. But there's so many nuances to the publishing world. It's very complex. But
trust me, I'm currently trying to research it, and it's like I'm learning a new language right now.
It's 100%. It's like I've worked in music for a long time, and publishing is still something that I learn new things about all the time because I've always been focused on the label side. And the label world is a bottomless pit of nonstop information and learning, just as the publishing side is. So like I've really dived into this pool,
and it's a constantly, in like Doctor Strange or whatever. What's is it? Where the world's constantly evolving. It's like that shit. The music industry, the minute you look away, it's like the building is like turned into this other shape. It's like constantly changing.
I'd say it's almost monthly changes at this point, where it's like once you've got a handle on something, next month, some new development, some new technology, some new thing is gone now, and now you have to focus over here. It's just, it's always changing.
You know what you said that made me think of something is really funny? The publishing side of the music business, like you said, and for people who are non-musicians, because we've made a point of this podcast not being a music podcast. That's why it's fun to do like this kind of like in-depth talk about music, because it's more about coming at it from a non-music podcast side. You know what I mean? Like it's more about, let's learn about this, because our listeners aren't all musicians, but I went to Midem, which is like a huge music conference, right?
France.
Huge learning experience in France, and I had that year learned about publishing, and I went to this keynote, and I'm learning about it. And so I walk up to one of my friends who's like OG in the business, and I say, man, can you explain to me what the difference between publishing and licensing is? And he leaned in, and real talk, this is an old guy, said, I can't. And it's just like, the elephant in the room is kind of nobody fully understands. It's like the king's clothes or whatever. Like everyone goes like, yeah, I get it. Yeah, I fully understand what you mean by that. And then it's like every time I come in close, because I really want to get into this space, this is where the money is.
Yes.
And so I'm like, you know me, bro, I'm a sponge for knowledge. If I don't know it, then tell me what I don't fucking know, so I can be in 5 years, I'm going to give a keynote on this to these. I'm going to fill this knowledge gap. You know what I mean? But it's like, hey, I'm really trying to get in this space. Could you explain to me? And the person's like, I don't really know. Like, and that's most of the answer I get.
Yeah, and that's a common thing amongst like the people that are getting into the business. They know, I want to play shows, I want to get my stuff up on Spotify, and I want to go after playlists. But then that's like the main kind of stuff they focus on. And then there's all this different worlds of the publishing side and sync and licensing that there's real money to be made there. But
I want to get your opinion.
It's a lot harder to break into.
I have a conspiracy theory, and you know me, Jess. Do I have conspiracy theories?
Oh no,
never
heard one of those.
I have a conspiracy theory.
What's that?
It's a music industry conspiracy theory. People purposefully are not teaching this to keep the stupid musicians out.
I could see part of that being true.
I feel like I've been in the game for a long time, and yeah, sure, maybe some of that responsibility is on me. I should have done more research because I wasn't researching a lot in the first half of my career. Research wasn't the thing I thought to do as a musician. You know what I mean? But then I did start going to things. I was talking to people, and it feels like the sync licensing, getting your song placed in movies and TV shows and stuff, and publishing, only recently in the last 2 years have I been hearing more like, let me explain it to you. To like a big group of people.
Yeah.
Here's how you go about it. Here's how you submit for it. And before that, it was more like, you gotta get your publishing. Well, what's that? It's like somebody walks by you at a party and whispers it.
Well, a lot of times the only thing that people know about publishing is that the horror stories of the old like kind of 80s and 90s industry of somebody signing away their publishing.
Diddy. All I know about publishing is don't sign with Diddy.
That's what like if you were to ask any sort of mid-level artist about publishing, that's probably their first reaction is gonna be like, don't give away your publishing.
But isn't that interesting?
They probably don't know what that means or why.
Bro, it gets deeper. You know, after I signed with you, because by the way, spoiler alert, I signed with you.
Oh yeah, we didn't get to that. We didn't finish that.
People were like, I wouldn't do it, man. I wouldn't sign a distribution deal.
Let's be honest. People who know nothing about anything were saying
I look at my face and be like, then you don't know what it is. Because it's bags of sand, bruh. Because if you wouldn't sign a distribution deal, you simply don't know what it is.
Yeah.
It's no risk. You guys support my vision. Otherwise, you wouldn't have signed me. You don't have your hand in the creative pot. The percentages are always super reasonable with any reputable company. And it's just like, I can't think of an area to object with. Yeah. Unless your whole thing is not being involved with big companies because you're very like anti-corporation, then sure, yeah, I kind of understand that maybe this would kind of undermine that. But that's the 0.001%. Yeah. Is very specific.
I had a friend actually say, who is also a musician, actually say like, oh, he's not going to be able to make the kind of music that he wants to make.
That's not true at all.
That's not a thing.
That's just people have this weird kind of, it's from watching things like Almost Famous and all these movies that had this glamour. Right. It's a beautiful movie. I love it. But that's from people that don't ever see the other side of the fence.
Yeah.
They see all these glamorized versions of TV shows and different things, and they take little pieces of it and they think that's what this is. But it's like there's so many different types of deals and so many different things that are negotiable in those deals that there's no way to say this is what every deal that an artist is ever going to get is going to look like.
Of course.
It's different for literally everyone.
As new things come in. I think on this side, we talk a lot about value gaps or like knowledge gaps, and like, because I think once you start to pay attention, you can really spot those.
Yeah.
It's like, well, how do all these people not know this thing or whatever? You know who I'd love to give a shout out to, and they don't listen to the podcast, but so this is just a very like genuine shout out to, but I saw them at CMW, and then I bumped into David out in the real world, and he's since placed a bunch of my songs on TV, is like We Are Supergroup. They're like a kind of a weird like publishing sync house, and their whole angle, and why I even want to shout them out is I went to Canadian Music Week, and the guy says on the microphone, I don't know about any of these publishers. They're probably going to say, like, don't send you music. Oh, everybody, here's my email. Get your pens out. And that was just like, I'd never seen somebody do that. It's like, everybody get your pens out. Send me your best song. Because we're looking for new sounds constantly. And it's just like, I had never felt like, hey, you don't have to be scared to contact me. There's this like level of fear where they're like, kind of want you to jump through hoops to even know how to submit a song to them. And there's a level of fear, like, am I even good enough? And with David, it really felt like, oh, I could send something and see.
Is that Tyzowski?
David Heyman.
Oh, Heyman. Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. Heyman, yeah.
And he's got a podcast too. And he's a cool, and it's kind of what I'm saying is it's kind of like our mentality way of thinking of this area. It's not so much about like, shh, don't tell the artist how to do this. He's kind of like, tell them all how to do it.
Gotcha.
And then I'll just pick through it and pick the best songs. You know what I mean? I think I wouldn't be surprised if more companies pop up in that space. When you go to Medem, for example, there's all these little companies that pop up where for going to get your mechanicals and because they realize that as artists are getting smarter and smarter, there's spaces for companies to come up and grab little pieces of the pie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Are you seeing some of that as well? Where these like artist service companies that are, some of them are initially are easy. It's management will promote you, but the new ones are like.
Well, now the big thing now that you're seeing pop up like crazy over the last year, and you're going to see more and more of, is people that a lot of companies that used to mainly just do radio promotion, they're now doing playlist promotion, where you can hire them to do the same way you would take a single to radio and you pay them to run a campaign for you. You're now paying them to run a campaign at user-generated playlists.
I'm so glad you brought this up.
Yeah. Yes, I was just about to say the same thing.
Because I'm smart. I'm not smarter than like people, but I'm smart enough to get things. Very rarely does someone show me something, I'm like, I don't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And playlist promotion is one of those things.
Oh, it's a Rubik's Cube, man.
Because some of them are lying and they're botting it up, I think. Mm-hmm. Some of them are cool kids, as I call them, and they're in with some playlist curators that matter, and that's enough to launch a whole company based on, hey, I know these curators, and getting on those playlists alone is a business.
Yeah.
So I know those two things exist, but I believe there's a third group that I don't understand yet. Because I'm constantly getting promoted to for playlist promotion, and I now have a label up, like Heavy Ox is off the ground with like moving, and they're all looking to me to be like, what do we do on playlist promotion? And I finally met a guy who I trust enough that he's not a scam artist, so I know that, but I still do not fucking understand what he's doing. Because if I did, I would just do it.
Yep.
But I don't. Do you have any comprehension on what these, like, what's the mechanic of one of these playlist promotion companies?
Well, that's the
or
thing.
Mechanism, I guess is the right word.
This can dovetail into a lot of different things, but
give us an overview.
Essentially what those companies are doing is there's two different types of playlists when it comes to, let's use Spotify as the main example.
That's who we mean, let's be honest.
Yeah. Well, no, Apple Music,
they matter too.
is huge.
No, they do.
Huge.
But from a public optic standpoint, when you're an up and coming artist,
Yeah.
it's all about getting on the big Spotify playlist.
Yeah, the glamour of it is on Spotify,
Yeah.
but the numbers are actually higher on Apple.
Spotify has higher stream numbers, monthly though, don't they?
But the user count is higher on Apple.
They have more users.
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, so they're beginning to be more active, but the smaller amount of users are more active on Spotify.
Cool information. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
But that's gonna teeter and totter. That'll go.
But I didn't know it was that close because I knew Spotify had the crown for a long time.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that Apple had closed the gap or whatever.
So with these playlist promotion companies on Spotify, for example, there's the official Spotify playlist.
Yes.
You know, the Rap Caviars.
What do they call those? Those are
they're official.
Yeah, that's a word. There's a word for them. But continue.
Yeah, so the official playlists are the, let's call them the top of the mountain.
Yep.
And then the rest of the mountain, where there's a lot more of, are the user generated playlists.
Yes.
That's where I know you've got your own couple playlists that you've
we launched
created
them recently, and in fact, if you want to hear my kinds of music, we got backyard jams, we've got sexy jams, we've got cool wavy autotune jams.
See, perfect examples. So let's say that your backyard jams playlist all of a sudden,
it's fucking lit. You'd love it.
let's say all of a sudden you get 500,000 people following your playlist, and then every song that you
That's
add,
ambitious. We're not going to get to 500.
but yeah, it's gonna happen.
We're currently at one.
It's gonna happen.
Okay.
Yeah, let's be real for a second. So eventually your playlist gets to a point where every song that you're now adding to it is getting tons of plays instantly because your playlist carries with it this value. So these playlist promotion companies, they make a living off meeting people like you who own those playlists and building their Rolodex of these curators that are just people that have made a playlist that all of a sudden got a bunch of followers. And they keep in contact with these people, and I'm sure there's some payola stuff going on there as well.
Yeah.
I would not be totally shocked about that because it's sort of like the Wild West at the
it's
moment.
unregulated,
It
right?
is. 100% it is. So you're like, I'm the playlist promotion company. You hire me. I charge X amount of thousands of dollars for X amount of months to service one of your singles.
Yeah.
And I go to all my cachet of contacts I have from all these different curators and pitch your single to them to add it to their user generated playlists. By being added to multiple user generated playlists within a short period of time, the algorithm on Spotify's back end notices that your song's being added to all these user playlists that have high follower counts. So now your song now becomes eligible for some of the official
And that's
playlists.
where snowballs can start to
It's
happen.
the snowball effect. But
Right.
it's not like, okay, I got one ad here and then 3 months later I got an ad here.
No.
It's like
The
within a
algorithms
week,
smart. It's momentum. They've accounted for momentum. They know if it's just random.
Exactly.
Okay, so that explains one. That explains.
So, but that's the Players promotion side. What I was doing for you when I worked at Fontana North as the official distributor of your music,
Was pitching me to.
Pitching directly to the curation teams at Spotify, at Apple, at all these different places, because the amount of volume of releases that go through a company like that on a weekly basis could be anywhere from 10 to 30 releases every Friday.
By the way, they're called editorial playlists, I believe, the ones that Spotify runs.
Yes. Yeah. Then that's.
I knew there was a fucking word.
Their editorial curation teams are the ones. Yeah, you're right. So we would have weekly calls with those teams, the direct people that are running the playlists.
So do you think the playlist promotion companies maybe have gotten themselves in this world that they're doing this as well?
No, because
that's
the Spotifys and people they don't want to deal with these other companies, because if you think about it in the terms of volume, like Spotify has to deal with every artist out there. They don't have the time to answer every phone call, every email. It just is not possible. So it then funnels down to who's your distributor. We're going to deal with your distributor. So whether it's through CD Baby, Fontana, E1, whatever, there's many different companies that you can just throw your music through. But TuneCore and CD Baby, there's no staff there. They're not pitching your stuff at these people. There's no human-to-human interaction.
Somewhat, right?
It's being delivered.
They've got admin, but that's about it.
They'll say that it's being pitched and presented to them, but it's not a human-to-human interaction the way that it was when I would every Wednesday.
A list through
every Wednesday, I'd be on the call with the guys and be like, "Hey, I'm going to send you over this package. I'm going to,
Which is when you're talking about a band, really, what you need somebody to say. Man, you got to hear this song.
You got to get on a phone call with somebody.
This
and be
song
like,
is powerful.
You're going to lose your fucking mind over this.
When it comes to music, that's what it is. So I think you've given us the granular on the one side, which is these companies that potentially have a good relationship with curators, which I suppose only begs the question, who is this person who knows? Because playlist curators they're one of the harder people to interact with, because you can't even go to events. There's not even a logical access point to a curator.
No, other than just going to their playlist,
because
clicking
I'd be
on their
willing to put the
username
next
and
10
messaging.
years to long term getting into that spot.
Yeah.
But I can't even think of a thing to grab onto to get more traction with curators. Because I've gone down the rabbit hole, but unfortunately, so has every other mixtape rapper in the world. So they've blocked off access points a long time ago. So you see why someone like me might be skeptical when someone goes, "Hey, I've got all these playlist curators." I'm like, where did you meet? A lot of key playlist curators.
Well, a lot of them are just lying. They just want your money.
So, but some of them provide results because they're around long enough that I believe that they're providing some level of results.
And that's why when a lot, in the beginning days of this new playlist world where these companies started popping up, it was just a lot of random people that were like, I'm going to just do this now. And it's like, okay, well, what background do you actually have in this? And then now over the last, I'd say 6 months to a year, you're seeing a lot of established, reputable radio promotion companies, publicity companies that are now just venturing into this space.
You see what I mean, though? Like, how? How do they, let's say you're a radio company, you've got no relationships at Spotify. So yeah, if you're a big enough company, you could pull some big money moves and meet the Spotify people so you can get in with them.
But if you're with a reputable company like that, it's not hard to meet the people you got to meet.
So that at Spotify. So yeah, okay, that makes sense. But yeah, it's just such a thing, right? There's this like gray area in the middle, because that does make sense. If you got enough money where Spotify's like, they're not playing around, this radio company's really going to make a shift and become this. So like, let's talk to them.
Yeah.
But
and they just know
these guys that you meet at music conferences. It's a guy in a suit who represents like, for example, FFM is a company online I discovered because they're also doing pre-save campaigns. Yeah. So we're using them for pre-save, but when I research them, they also do playlist promotion. But they provide no detail. They never say Spotify's official playlist or like it's very like, we'll get you these plays, and then it's just like, there's a black room. Like, well, from who?
Well, a lot of them is bots.
On what playlist?
They'll just click bot it, and then it's like
and Spotify doesn't play around with that shit.
Oh, no. You'll get blackballed.
I do not. I don't fuck around with that shit, because there's certain ecosystems you don't want to piss in. You know what I mean? And Spotify's one of them.
Spotify goes hard where they'll do stuff like if they can see that you're egregiously like botting your plays and stuff, it could get to a level where they ban your distributor, not even you, your distribution company, and everything that they do. And somebody will get kicked off.
They wouldn't take Fontana down for no reason.
They'll threaten to.
Yeah, they'll be like, tell your boys over in Echelons down to chill out. Chill out on all that, all those bot plays they've been getting.
How often that stuff actually happens, I'm not sure, but I've heard these stories of stuff like that happening.
Yeah, I early on when I was researching those first playlist companies, the ones who Spotify promo companies, the even more vague ones before they even knew to say playlist, where it was just Spotify promo.
Yeah.
I Google it and people are like, my band's account was deleted.
Yeah, I wonder
You're like,
why.
Holy shit. Yeah, but to be fair, early on, if you don't think critically like us, because I'm really thinking, I would say pretty high level to be like, how are they accomplishing the thing that they claim? Most bands are just like, oh, cool, it's SpotifyPromo.com, only $600. Wow, yeah, we have money for that in our album promo. They're not thinking, how is this company accomplishing what they promised to accomplish?
Yeah.
So I would say a pretty healthy percentage of those customers are doing so unknowingly.
Probably.
I
yeah.
know well enough to be like, how?
Well, you're always, trying to peel back the hood on
And I
stuff.
don't want my shit fucked up. And I'm not mad. Like, we do AdWords, and like we do certain things where it's like the numbers are fluffed because we're promoting constantly, and the promotion creates some traffic. So I would call those somewhat fluffy numbers because it's people coming to see what's up versus like they're super fans. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But so we're not like purists. You gotta find me on your own, uphill both ways, or I don't want you to listen. No, we'll promote it on Instagram, like this podcast. We run a promo so people can get eyes on it and think, do they want to see it?
Yeah.
But at least there's a use there. You're promoting it. This idea of buying views or like streams, to me, is like masturbating with like no cum. It's like you're just doing it to do it. It doesn't really get you anything.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
if you don't get me wrong, I believe there is some act out there that has perfectly hacked all of the numbers are bought, so you could run a perfect mirage. Where all you know what I mean? They buy followers, they buy views, they buy streams. So you could set up a perfect mirage. But that sounds like a lot of fucking work.
Well, it is, and then
money.
I'm sure there's an act that's doing this.
And then they'll get frustrated of like, we've got all these plays, and I set up this whole thing, and we're still not getting playlisted. Well, because they can see, like they have.
Yeah.
The minute you try to book with a booking agent, the booking agent goes, "Ben, how come no one comes to any of your shows? We got 1 million followers."
Yeah. Well,
I'm saying there's always an end game.
100%.
If you lie, it's like it'll push it further. People on Twitter will believe you're famous, but the minute anyone signs you, they're gonna be like, "What is up?"
Yeah, totally.
You know?
Yeah.
I'm not even that mad about it. I get pretty intense about stuff.
Well, yeah.
I just mean it's like, it doesn't bother me that they do it, but it's like, I don't think you've thought this through. Like, let's just get a piece of paper out and be like, what happens when you ultimately have to prove this follower, or you have to, if you're just doing it just to look cool and get laid, I kind of get it. If some DJ said to me, yeah, I buy all my followers, but you just see how I get laid all the time, I'd be like, that's kind of creepy, but cool, I guess. Well, it's like, if you're trying to actually start a music career, I think you're wasting a lot of money because someone's going to realize at a certain point that this isn't real.
Well, and that's why I always say just play the game that they wait. Like Spotify, for one, is very upfront about how they want you to use their service.
I like that.
They provide so many resources and tools at artist.spotify.com. You can go there, read about everything that they want you to do. And it's like they literally break it down step by step of this is what we want you to do. Follow these things to the T.
These are the rules of the game. You can win at the game.
Yeah, exactly. And then a perfect example of that is when I'm gapping out on the name of the song now, but one of the songs that was on your remix record after Fire Breather, was it Here We Go, I think?
Yeah,
that was
really well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wanna know why? Because we positioned it properly. I pitched it the way it needed to be pitched.
Yeah.
I had you do all the social love that you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
We hit every checkbox, and they saw the effort we were putting in. On my weekly call with them, I just stressed again, we've done everything that you need us to do. I sent them the links to your posts of promoting it. They're like, okay, we're gonna playlist this now. Like they don't say that to me because they have to be unbiased. They can never tell you that you're gonna get featured.
That's my second most successful single because of that.
Because we followed the game the way they told us to.
You know what's really funny? You know what my most successful single is? And this is why the music business is so crazy. My most successful single in my career is a song called Till I Come Home with T-Zank and a guy named Mike Needler on guitar. I don't rap on it at all. It's like a blues song. It's my slowest song of my career. On the road, road. It's like the slowest song I've ever put out.
But it's vibe.
It was a vibe.
Yeah.
We put it out. I put it out on my hastily released Neo Blues EP that I did not promote at all. I made the cover using a photo shoot I had done that day with Notion. It's like, it was very like, hey, we're not going to put these songs out, but I'm too cheap to not put out songs I paid to have mastered. So I was like, let's just put out this cool little side project with kind of a blues thing I was experimenting with.
Yeah.
You had just recently left before that.
Yeah.
And the new guy wasn't in yet. So I had no A&R for this release.
No, but there was when I left, I did tell the people that were I was leaving some things there,
that
and I was
person's
like,
name, by the way, because he did nothing wrong. Because when I contacted him, he what I said was this you guys? And he was like, I'm gonna be honest, it wasn't. Had nothing to do with this. Because what happened was I not only was put on New Music Friday Canada, but for the first time on the day of release, I was put on New Music Friday USA.
Nice.
And which I got like 25,000 plays in 24 hours, which I can't tell you what that feels like when you put out a project on December 30th and you're just like, well, I shouldn't have even probably paid to have these mixed, but whatever. And then the next day you wake up and there's 25,000 plays. You've been added to 2,000 playlists. And then my song went to number 44 on Viral Songs in America.
Yeah.
For like for 12 hours or something, like for the very narrow win. And then I joked forever that Hugh Jackman knocked me off that list. So me and Hugh Jackman.
Oh yeah, that's right. From that like, musical
From
or
that
whatever.
stupid fucking musical that went on to make a lot of money, it turns out. What was I saying? Oh, but so yeah, and then I emailed the guy and I say, I don't know if this was you guys, but this is the commercial success wise, the peak of my career.
Yeah. Well,
he goes, sorry, bro. To be honest, we haven't done anything. So
yeah, but that just means that they weren't highlighting it in those calls.
The point I'm making is it's like you put so much work in, and it's like sometimes they go, yeah, we weren't feeling it. And then you put no work in, and then you wake up the next day and you've got the biggest hit of your career.
Yeah, because you definitely were not focusing on that.
It was just because I was getting ready to put out Let's Get Rich 6 weeks later.
Yeah.
So I was just not even thinking about it. And so I woke up and I like woke you up. I'm like, Jess, my song's on the charts.
It's amazing.
It's just like, what's going on? Anyways, it's like that's such a moment in my career that speaks to like, even when you feel like you really know what's going on, there's so much at play that you fucking don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Well, and even, before that person came and filled my old role when I left the company, the stuff was still set up to be automatically pitched and presented, but it wasn't being worked above that instead of just being sent along with, here's our weekly priorities.
And you can't account for, you guys listed it as like, hey, this is one of our acts or whatever, and then he goes, well, I'll listen to it, and he likes it. Like, you just can't account for it. He listens to it and he likes it.
No, but it was also because we had success of the pitching we had done prior, and we had received love from them before. When they see something new from you coming, they're more prone to be open to supporting it because they've already supported you in the past.
This is a good question.
What's up?
It's tied to that. I'm not being crazy right now. Sometimes I will go fucking off, but it's tied to that. How many people are listening to my records or my label records when we're sending that? Like, let's say Fontana's pitching them.
Yeah.
Is it one guy? Is it 12 guys who all take turns listening, or do you have no idea?
In terms, sorry, what
Like
do you mean?
at Spotify, because in theory, because I'm an access points person.
Yeah.
So you guys pitch it. The next access point is there's a guy named Rod, and a guy named Tom, and a guy named Jim, and a girl named Sarah. Is it like one guy who does it, who mostly goes, he listens to 1 or 2 seconds of a few things? Or is it like a big team and they listen to everything? Do you have any sense of that?
I do, but I don't have a definitive answer.
Sure, but give me a sense
it's different for everything, but it really depends on the genre, to be honest.
Interesting.
Because there's, with these playlist companies are like, Spotify, Apple, whatever, they have people that are designated to each genre that are the experts of their field. So within, say hip hop, there could be, I don't know the exact number, but it could be
a small group.
But in North America, could be a team of, let's say, 10 people that cover all of North America for the hip hop curation.
And they would listen to, in theory, what being submitted each week to consider for these playlists.
Not everything.
But they listen to it. Let's call it a selection.
The featured highlights, because the people,
and they probably scan through to look for interesting titles. Maybe
they'll look for names that they recognize.
This artist featured on this. I don't know this artist.
Yeah.
They check it out a little bit. Okay, yeah.
But there's not an exact science as to why it happens. But it could be just one person that listens to it, says no, and then it doesn't go further than that. One person, because
I'm sure they're not all like sending it to each other back and forth.
Well, kind of, because with your exact specific situation, your stuff's being delivered from Canada to the Canadian office of Spotify. If the Canadian office of Spotify gets stoked about it, they hit up the American office, and then it snowballs. Yes. Yeah.
So is it probably like a weekly protocol where they say, these are the songs we're going to playlist for tomorrow?
These are the stuff that we've received for this genre that we're excited about. We feel good about it enough that we should bring it to your attention.
So do you think they let's say, for example, they put, for me, it's Northern Bars and New Music Friday, Canada are probably the two that I could expect.
And that's the Canadian teams that are curating that.
So I have a single coming out January 25th. This long ages from now. But those are the two that I wake up in the morning and I check. You know what I mean? And because I'd say like 2 out of 3 singles ends up on one of those 2 playlists.
Well, and that's the thing.
Which is good. By the way, I owe that to you. And every artist around me is like, how the fuck are you making that happen? And it's mostly because you pitched me so well for like 2 years in a row.
We were consistent. Yeah. And I just kept highlighting how good you were on socials and giving love back to them.
And I do. Now I produce content with their logo as the center,
which is good. Like
I created this. It's like with the Spotify logo with the anti-gravity cover shining through it. It's like stream on Spotify, and I fucking tagged them everywhere. I learned that from you.
I was going to say, where was the moment that you learned that? Because I remember you telling me that.
Recently I went to Spotify again to give them love, and I think Nate's one guy there, right? Is Nate one of the two guys?
He is.
Do you know who the other guy is?
Adrian. He's out on paternity leave.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So they gave a really great masterclass at Canadian Music Week, and
That's right.
I've been to a lot of keynotes there. I've never seen one this full. Every seat was full, and people were sitting between the rows. People were grumbling because people were leaning against their knees. It was like crazy, and these guys did about as good give actual tangible advice as I've heard. And it was I really appreciated that from them. And funny enough, I went outside after and smoked a joint and really take it in. And then Nate and Adrian walk out past me, so I palm the joint, and I'm like, guys, I really appreciate you guys not just giving war stories, which is fucking what everybody does, just give shitty war stories instead of giving me good information. And I said that, and they both laughed. And they're like, "Who are you?" And I said, "My name is Ilvibe, local rapper." And they're like, "Well, of course, yeah, we know who you are." And I'm like marching around the parking lot after they leave, hoping they don't look back at me.
Because those are the two guys I was pitching.
Yeah,
your stuff
that's what
to.
I'm saying. So it's like there really is, and that's why I asked if you had a sense of like, is it a small team? Because it helps you to think of that, where you're like, well, how can I get on these couple of guys' radar? By the way, for example, I followed Nate today on Instagram because someone else tagged him in something, and I was like, oh, dope. And that's one way that's been useful to me in the past is to interact with them on socials, because they're like, hey, I just went out and saw Get Out 2, blew my mind, and I'm like, I went opening night too. It's like, movie was crazy. And you're not being thirsty. It's just like, hey, I'm out in the world. I'm a cool person.
Yeah.
We met that one time.
Well, if they're following
Remember
you,
who I am.
and if they follow you and they have an eye on the stuff that you're
Your
doing,
projects, that's
when
right.
the distro
That's the next level.
then pitches
if you
you,
get a follow from them, then yeah.
well, then it gets to the step where your next release, the distribution company's pitching you again, and they're like, "Oh yeah, of course, I've seen him building up and doing his promo already."
Because Northern Bars is pretty low. It's good for about 200 or 300 streams, which is pretty small for a Spotify curated playlist. It's more of a brand look to get on that playlist.
Yeah.
Point I'm getting at is I could see them being like, hey, this artist is really working hard. Put them on Northern Bars.
Well, and to be honest, to go back to this, everything that we've just talked about in the last little bit there about the support and the positioning, it's still all secondary. It always comes back to, is your song good? Is it going to be proper in line in this playlist with these other songs?
Shareability comes down to the song.
Yes.
Right? And do they tell their friends about it? Are they playing it out of their car? These are the things that like music, and trust me, when I'm with my team in studio, that's all we talk about. When I'm writing songs, and I'm such an asshole to myself when I'm writing, because I'm like, is this good enough to make somebody call their girlfriend and be like, you need to fucking hear this new song I just heard? Because that's what you're shooting for.
Well, yeah. In the world that, the label world that I live in, it's like one of the sayings that gets kicked around our office a lot is that, can the world live without this? Because if it can,
wow, that's powerful.
it has to be from that level. It's like, can the world not live without this, or can we do without this?
You know how we talked about how it was music's cumulative? Yeah. It's cumulative, and the space on your hard drive is not, like on your phone's hard drive. So,
and your brain's hard drive.
And your brain's hard drive, right? That's right. So people, it's like, I often, when we're writing songs, I try to remind people that it's like, for someone to add you to their phone, you kind of need to think of it like they're going to take someone else off. So who are they? Like, you got to be better than somebody that they already love before. And I don't know if that's exact math, but it's a good thought experiment, a way to think of it.
Sure.
To be like, it's not a low bar. People don't wake up in the morning and go, I need 2 new artists that I like today. No, for the most part, music fans will go, I really got to take time and listen to the new Meth album. I haven't got around to it yet, because it's hard to listen to all your favorite albums.
I think that the general music listener isn't like that at all. They're more so not paying attention. Well, and I'm kind of saying a generalized statement.
Yeah.
There's obviously people that are exceptions to this, but I'd say the general music listener these days aren't really too concerned about which album, which artist.
You're right.
They're just going to a playlist, hitting play, and listening to what's in it.
You're right.
Yeah, it's more so like this song based rather than artist and album based.
Well, and then they'll hear something in the playlist that they dig, and they'll go hard it and add it to a separate
100%.
playlist.
Yeah, totally.
you know?
I guess what I mean, and sometimes when I'm speaking, I condense too much, because more what I'm saying is, as a up and coming artist, the first thing you're aiming for, if you're trying to build a fan base, are those people who are open to being a fan of a new artist.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because on the up, and yes, you want to get on a big playlist. Like, I got those streams for Till I Come Home. I don't really make songs like that, so a lot of those artists didn't bleed through and love all my other music.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, if you're trying to build a fan base the way that you're so often taught, I think the low-hanging fruit are the music fans who go, I do love to fall in love with a new rapper, a new, like someone like Russ or Logic, the way they built super fans for them specifically, not just playlist support, but like super fans for them specifically. But I think you're right. Those people are 20% to the 80% that are, hey, I love it because it was on Rap Caviar.
Yeah.
That's kind of all I need to know about it.
Well, then
That
they get
it was on Rap Caviar after my favorite other song.
They get exposed to you from a few playlists that they trust and they like, and then
they wanna see you in concert,
and then
and that's
from
where it
there,
goes, yeah.
then they
Right.
dive in and listen to your record and do some stuff from there. But on average, people aren't just like, well, let's go try out this new record and listen to it front to back. Like I do that, but I know I'm a bit of a unique, unique
you're right.
listener.
So it's funny because a lot of the time, the things I learn, I'm slow to internalize to my career because you have momentum going. You know, a big part of my career momentum is these albums. In a lot of cases, right, when I did Fire Breather and I met Meyer around that time and we started dreaming of the Aliens thing, I was sort of locked into 2 years and doing these 2 albums, and in a good way, but I just mean being in album mode for the next 2 years from 2016 to 2018. And then at some point in there, I realized albums are not the way, and I'm kind of on this roller coaster. I've got these albums. You know what I mean? And so what we're going now for next year and forward is we've completely shifted, and it's all single based.
Yeah.
Because I want more swings at the bat. I felt with Anti-Gravity, it's my best release, and I get a lot of. I just discovered you, thought it was going to be shit. It's my new favorite album. But it's still 12 songs at once. So I had one swing at the bat with Spotify.
Exactly.
And then I'm kind of like, fuck, I got the song with Socrates that got no love. I can't pitch it again. So I'm kind of like, the new stuff that we're doing, I'm actually even more excited because I feel so stupid that I didn't think of this before, but to enjoy each song by itself and people to be like, wow, I can't think about this Keep It Cold with Socrates, which largely got slept on the album because it's the third catchiest song, which is good on a great album, but by itself it would have been a whole other thing.
Yeah, I love that song.
And so it's I would love to have a month where it's that's all I'm promoting is this thing, and of course the swing of the bat with Spotify. So I'm really trying to be informed by these trends that I'm seeing and internalize them to our strategies as well. You know?
How do you feel about releasing full albums versus releasing singles? Do you think there's going to be a world where an artist could just release singles because there is no physical album sales?
You're already living in it. That's exactly what most approaches are. Some of the with the current job that I have, there's a bunch of new developing artists that we've been working on building their assets up for a couple of years now and haven't even released anything public yet.
Lyric videos.
And the approach, the approach that we're going to be taking is that exactly that. Releasing, 5-6 songs in a row, whenever we feel the time is right to drop them, give them enough time to breathe. You don't want to go too quick or too far apart.
So why would you say that big artists are still releasing 20 song albums and things like that now then?
Because they are a big artist.
Just because they already have the following because and they know everyone's going to listen to everything.
Exactly. For developing artists coming out the gate now, I'd say it is better to do a singles approach. Yeah. And again, it goes back to the genre, and there's so many variables.
There's other factors.
Yeah, there's a million factors. Yeah. But from a 30,000 foot level looking down, doing the singles approach, like you said, it gives you more shots up at bat. It gives you more chances to get into these playlists.
And more coverage of real estate if you do get any promotion at all.
Exactly.
Right?
And it gives you, one of the analogies, I got a whole bunch of analogies I like to say, but one of them is that it gives you more bullets in the chamber to fire.
Yeah.
So it's you're not just firing one and that's it. It's your album.
Funny.
You're just firing
three
more.
Really great, but also really bad metaphors. I'm more swings at bat. And it's more bullets in the chamber, more real estate. It's just we're super douches right now. We can't just say it's just music business.
But that's music talk. That's all it is analogies that.
Those analogies are useful when you're trying to wrap your head around it. I just also like to roast myself and be self-aware at the same time.
So we've talked a lot about Spotify. Yeah. I think one thing that this is probably a simple or repetitive question for you guys, but something that I think our listeners will enjoy is the short version of the question would be is radio dead / dying? The long version of the question would be what how does radio fit into what you do right now? What when it's compared to Spotify and iTunes and stuff, how does it fit into your everyday?
And a bit of a repetitive answer again, but it really depends on the genre,
sure.
Especially for Canadian radio, because they have this rule. I don't know how accurate it is now, but as of 8 years ago, it was pretty spot on the numbers. But Canada does about 10% of what America does in terms of numbers and business.
Do you know is streaming close to that?
Yeah, it's the 10% rule.
Oh, that's
it's across
so-
the
okay,
board
cool, yeah.
for sales, for streams, for everything.
Sorry, what was that?
So, like, if whatever you're going to sell in America, you're
a
going to do
million
10%
streams,
of it
be
in
100,000.
Canada.
Oh, okay.
Like, whatever you do in America, you'll do 10% in Canada.
Okay.
That's just based on the amount of people and
Yeah.
the way that things get supported. But that rule also applies to radio stations. The amount of radio stations there are in America, we have about 10% of the amount that they have here.
Oh, wow.
And then when it comes to things like rock, like even Canadian rock stations, they're dying and dwindling. There's only a handful of them that really move the needle. Country still has a strong radio support, especially in Canada.
Also, I think their demographic tends to listen, like truck drivers. You think about, like, they've got a driving demographic kind of in a way too.
And you know, top 40 and pop and things like that. Those still
Top 40 will live forever because it's sort of like background noise radio too.
those are the ones that are still keeping the doors open
Top
for a
40 is
lot.
basically conglomerated into like 2 or 4 companies, right?
Yeah, 100%.
So it's become, even though it's still strong, but it's kind of become this like automated beast. It's not what it was.
Yeah, it's the Bell-owned stations, the Chorus-owned
There's
stations.
no Tarzan Dan anymore.
No, well, there's.
I mean, he's still alive, guys. He didn't die. But
shout out Tarzan Dan.
Shout out Tarzan Dan. But I just mean where the idea that they have some kind of voice or power, or it's the idea they're essentially hosting the algorithm.
Well,
you know what I mean?
and
I don't even say that pessimistically. I just think that's kind of what it is.
To try to answer your question, like radio is still a huge focus of what my day-to-day job is. Like, for example, like most recently, one of the releases that we had back in March was for Canadian country legend George Canyon. And part of it was like a 2-pronged strategy that we did with his release where we focused as hard as we could on streaming and playlists, but still he did a national radio tour where he wasn't playing shows. He just toured across the country, visiting radio stations, playing songs for the staff, doing on-air interviews, and was literally on the road for a month and a half doing nothing but visiting radio
super dope.
stations.
I'd love to do something like that one day.
Yeah.
You know, and because he's had radio success in the past, they welcome him into the station with open
They
arms.
used to play his
Great
last
to see you again,
record.
George.
Yeah,
you
of
know,
course.
how's the kids been? That sort of thing. And
For
then,
an artist who's just like an up-and-coming artist
beat
who
me to
none
it.
of these radio stations have heard of, do you think that them focusing on radio at all as a strategy is useful?
it goes back to the genre, but you can still, those radio stations that, you know, we're so excited to bring George in and bring him on air and you know, have a quick talk with him about what's going on. They will still let those up and coming artists come in and play for the staff. Are you going to get on air? Probably not.
Depends how mind blowing I suppose you are or whatever.
it goes back
if you're,
to the
If you're
music.
country, it's a bit different, I bet, because there's a little bit more range, I think, to be like, this girl came in today, we'll play her song. Versus if you're a rapper, it's a bit tougher. Or
Yes.
if you're a pop star, it's a bit of a different
Country,
world.
I'd say, is a little bit more open to it, but again, it goes back to the song. But if that artist walks into a radio station, plays a song acoustically for the staff, and the whole staff is like, "This is fucking incredible,"
Yeah, then they'll play your
you're
record.
going to be on the air,
Yeah,
no
they'll-
problem.
They'll play your record. So just to tag onto your question, and kind of to make this about me, I keep wanting to be selfless, but fuck being selfless. This is my podcast. You know, radio's been a thing that I've often thought about. It's a bucket list item, and so that's a really important part for me because, like, jokingly, like, we're not having kids. I don't want to buy a house. I got all these things I don't worry about, but I kind of want a radio hit. Like, this is like my version of like having a kid. This is the thing I always dreamed of having, is a song on the radio that people are like, you're the guy from Let's Get Rich I heard on the radio all those times. Like, that's such a dream of mine, you know? And recently, for the first time, even to be honest, after you've left, and not because of you, because of my fucking slow ass, I finally made music good enough to go on the radio. I think Anti-Gravity is the first time I've got 2 or 3 songs that are radio quality and smart enough that they could be played without people being like, what the fuck is that? And the only thing that isn't radio on that, the last piece is that some of that is still kind of dated hip-hop. The new stuff's really, really modern, so we've kind of solved that small gap. So for the first time, I'm like, now we could... Because I never want to swing as like a long. I'm not a long Hail Mary type guy. I don't want to be like, maybe in 1 in 1,000 this could work. I want to wait until I've got something that's a radio song. Why isn't it on the radio?
Yeah.
And so we're kind of, now we've made it over that line, and because we made it over that line, a couple of the radio promo companies that are reputable. One is RPM. I've been talking to a lot.
Yep. Mike.
They're down. They're like, cool, but we haven't found the song yet, and because we don't have the money yet because we're getting married. There's other factors at play, but we're there. So it's finally like we've talked about it for the first time, and I know it's a lot of money. A friend once said, plan on spending like thousands of dollars.
Yep.
So let me tell you what I perceive the reason to do it is. You tell me if you agree.
Go for it.
The reason I think I should do it is in Canada, the number of artists that are like kind of over the like have had a hit song that you know line is pretty small relative to the number of artists who have not. And I feel like it's a good investment the same way I invest in a publicist and these other things that are very cash heavy investments. You invest to kind of like put you over this like threshold, to kind of put you into the next level a little bit, even if it's just while you're paying for it, because your publicist gets you in at these Juno parties and these things, right?
Yeah.
A good example of it. You know, I'm paying for this radio promotion, which could result in a hit. Let's be honest, with my budget and at my level, we're talking about a couple of weeks of this, or if it kind of goes, maybe a month of it being like a thing people have heard, right? That would be a good summary of people I know who've had radio hits at this kind of budget level. And I think that would make me, more than I am now, much like what Fontana North did for me, identify me as being this like entity who's not a local musician. He's somebody who's like on the national scale and you're hearing about him on that. So it's kind of like making that statement about me. And I think that statement might be really important at this point in my career.
And I totally agree that that would be a strong statement to have. And it's a great perception. And, you know, as you know, in this business, perception is key. The thing is that when you hire those radio promotion companies and you run a campaign, there is no guarantee you're going to get even one play out of those thousands of dollars that you're spending.
Exactly.
You could get 0 plays.
I don't want to talk about
That's
that
exactly
part,
what I was going to say, because
that.
let's put an imaginary price tag on it. So let's just say $5,000. So let's say you were going to pay $5,000 to get on so-and-so radio station or whatever. If you use that $5,000 to be playlisted or whatever it would be on Spotify, would it not be better used because you'd have a guaranteed listens? Whereas radio, people are listening, but you get no tangible listen from it. Do you know what I mean?
Totally right. That's why put it this way. That's why this subject is so crazy, because the more you talk about how not guaranteed it is, you're sort of explaining why it's magic.
Yeah.
Because you're that's the reason that if I get one,
It's huge.
You're in the winner's circle forever. It's like an example I use internally is Carl Wolf. Carl Wolf's a very regular guy. Like, he's a good dude. I meet him at things. He's a very normal dude, good looking guy, talented dude. I'm not taking anything from the guy. Relatively normal dude. Like when Chris Brown walked by, I'm like, that is a robot. I don't think robot, like he can like walk on the ceiling and like he's a hardworking singer. You know what I mean? And when he had Africa happen, which was a huge hit for him, he's like over a line that even if no other song gets close to it, it doesn't matter. He's over that line now. And I don't say that shallowly, because I'm not trying to, the fame doesn't matter to me. I'm famous enough. I'm good. I'm talking about being able to play at Canada Day events in Ottawa, and you want to play at, Burlington Rib Fest, and the crowd's like, oh, it's fucking Ill Vibe from that song. That's the thing I crave.
Yeah. Well, and
I love how the goal is Burlington Rib Fest.
No. Jess has heard me say that before. Do you know how many people go to Burlington Rib Fest?
it's a big deal.
Yeah, no, yeah. I'm just kidding, everyone.
People. When I used to work for Pepsi, Burlington Rib Fest was one of our big gets, because it was 750,000 people, like in one park.
Yeah,
it's a lot of people
for sure.
Well, and like whenever I get asked the radio question, like one of the I'll try to word.
Sorry, we're asking tired questions. Andy.
No.
Jess, work harder.
No. This is great.
Research. She gets asked this all the time.
I know.
Well, it's because every artist wants to know exactly what. Like, how do we crack into this? And the one thing that I always go back to is that you can't just do radio as like, well, let's try this and see how it works. Your whole strategy, like going back to like what you said about, you could have taken that money that for radio and put it to streaming, and maybe you would have been better served. My thing that I would suggest is that you need to do both of those things, and you need to do them in a way.
So I need $8,000.
Yeah, you need more. But that's
I don't have more.
the biggest thing that I would say is every piston needs to be firing at the same time. You can't be running a publicity campaign if you're not running your radio campaign. If you're not running, but that's
no, I don't. So,
it's too
Andy,
segmented.
Okay, so you know what? This is great, because you just gave me my favorite, because you just said something, and you're probably right, but you can't be, because on the way up, from 98%, that's how you have to do it.
Yeah. Well, that's because you can only do a little bit at a time.
I'm not a fucking schmuck. Like, I'm the example of how to like invest in yourself and make it work. And I never spent less than $5,000 on a release. Probably the most would be more like $8,000. And that's not a lot of major release terms, but to be self-made and self-employed, that's about as much money as I could feasibly think about throwing at a music release. You know what I mean? And when I started working with my publicist, who, by the way, is very reasonably priced, but it's still expensive in terms of like those two things can coexist. I'm just not bitching about the price, but it's expensive, and to do that simultaneously with hiring a playlist promoter and is literally impossible. And so I guess what I'm suggesting is, I was clearly like, I don't believe in callings, but like I'm made to be like a performer and songwriter and entertainer, and so instead of just doing that and being local and not trying to be bigger, piecemealing it while doing the rest myself has how I've built this fucking castle.
Right.
Whatever I've got is built off that.
But to answer your question of how do you break into those worlds, this is how. Like, and the other question
where's the money come from?
Well, hang on. So the other question you earlier about like, what do I actually do in my day to day? That is one of my major parts of my job, is to line up all the pieces that need to come into a release: the publicist, the radio promo, the booking agent, the management, the graphic design, all the different pieces have to come into place, and then I have to orchestrate them so that they're all working to support each other.
You don't, but the company pays for it.
But that's how you generate the perfect storm.
You're right. So I think we understand the perfect storm. Here's an important question. What would you suggest is the best route to get yourself in position for there to be a perfect storm? So, for example, would you say doing one of those things at a time until you can generate enough momentum that we notice so we can kind of start to do your version of things? Or do you say, don't do that because you're wasting your money hiring a publicist until you're doing it all at once? But then what should they be doing? You know what I mean? In place of hiring a publicist randomly and trying that, and then next thing, let's try a playlist. And then, because that's how, those are the people I know who invest. Because most don't do any of those things.
And I'm not saying don't do things. If you only
what would you recommend?
If you can only get a publicist, go ahead and do that and keep building it up.
If that's all you can afford, you're saying that's better than not doing.
100% it is. But if you're getting frustrated of like every release I have, I'm hiring this publicist and I'm not getting any further than I did the last time, it's because your publicist doesn't have the radio team feeding them stuff that they can capitalize on to get more PR opportunities. Then that new PR opportunity helps the radio person gets another ad, which helps
pieces are more than the
the playlist person get you more placements, which helps the publicist which helps the booking agent. It's just
the feedback loop. It's more than just in my head. You know what's interesting? In my head, I would think, let's say the publicist is worth 3 points. You know what I mean? The playlist promos worth 3 points. Radio's worth 3 points. In my head, I go, well, together, though, they're worth 12. It's worth more than the combined. But I think it's like, Andy goes, no, together they're worth 40. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
where it's like
because they just keep feeding them stuff, and it just goes up and up from there.
So that's not fair, though.
Because
I don't have that. I don't have that budget.
One of my favorite publicists that I worked with in the old Fontana North team, when she broke off and started her own independent company, the name of her company as a publicity firm,
I love her,
is the best.
I sent her a bunch of work. I love her.
What's the story?
Yeah.
That's the name of her company.
That's great.
And that is the number one question that a publicist gets asked when they present your stuff. What's the story? Why do I care?
At least stop recommending me. You got me too much business.
So, but that kind of is indicative of what I'm saying right there. Is like, what's the story? Well, the story is this is what's happening at radio. Yes. This is what's happening at playlists. This is what's happening show wise.
What's the story?
100%.
Is that what they say, or that's what they mean?
No, that is what they literally say.
Okay, but what's the story, Andy? You say you can rap fast, but what's the story?
But what's going on here? See,
what's going on? Ill vibe. It's not a good feeling.
He's a dandy fella.
What's the story? Housewives at home. They don't know why they care.
Well, that's people want to know that there's stuff going on, so that when they step in and add their little bit of support to it, that might be the thing that helps bring it up to another level, so that everybody can pat themselves on the back and say they did a good job.
It is about the back pat.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We were saying at the beach yesterday, I was getting my forehead burnt. It's actually not looking too bad. As I look in the mirror, I can see some lines.
Oh, you're looking good.
Is how Hollywood's different than music, because in Hollywood, everybody wants to be the producer who it was my idea to do it in front of a live audience. They want to put their touch on it, versus more in the music industry. There's a lot of you want to work with the guy who's already big. It's not about trying to find the next thing and make it big. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like in movies, someone will go, I'm the one. It was my idea to pair this young actor with this director. Oscar magic. It's like this idea of you put these two things together and you make magic. Music industry is a little bit more, and for reasons I don't fully understand, but it's probably in the fabric of the business that it's better money to work with an artist with a name for whether it's radio promo, probably goes back to retail shelf space and these things. You know what I mean? It's about signing the biggest act, because some of these acts, we work with an EDM act for videos, and they've hired us through 3 different labels in 3 different markets.
Nice.
Same act.
Yeah.
But they just we go to the other label in USA, and then their other label in the UK hires us for this other thing.
Two different USA ones and one UK.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
great.
So it's just, but the point is, it's just like, I don't remember where I was going with that, but it's just interesting.
Yeah.
Well, the publishing world actually does have elements of the Hollywood kind of flavor of what you're talking about. Where in the publishing world, the A&Ring and the creative work that goes into that from the business side of it, where there is a lot of, you know what, I've got this great writer over here, and I have this great producer that I know that they could be perfect. If I get this writer to work with this producer, I could get this artist to cut the song those two make, and we got magic.
Interesting.
So the publishing world does have a lot of elements.
It's very matchmakey in that.
Where it's
aspect.
you as the person who's coordinating all that stuff need to know that this producer is going to work with this writer. They're going to knock it out of the park. If I get this big artist over here to cut that song, we've got ourselves a fucking #1 hit right there.
Cool.
So there's a lot of that goes into it. But on the label side, everybody always says these days that labels don't want to sign anybody. Nobody's going to sign you. There's no deals out there to be made, which isn't entirely true. Nobody wants to start at step one.
Yeah,
That's what's happening. That's what's happening right now.
The onus has been put a little bit more on the artist to do the first couple of steps.
You need to get yourself to 80%. So I can
concept, right?
I can
show us that this works and people care about it.
Bring yourself to a point where I can come in and plug in a few things and show you a couple things, and then we're off.
It makes sense though, because to be honest with you, like looking at it optimistically, there's something really positive about thinking that you can build your sound. You can build the voice around you. Is it very indie? Like it's all like old Polaroid pictures of you. Like you kind of build this entity, just like we did here with Damaged Goods. Like it was important what the place looks like. And we talked really early about what things we would do to kind of give it a voice and a personality. You build it to a certain point, and then a podcast network goes, yeah, we would distribute you. Or same thing for you.
Very
it's
accurate.
Like, oh, you know what? Look at his like look and the sound and the way he does it all. And it's not big yet, but look at the way people are responding. We could make it big. And it's like, you need to at least get it there.
That goes again with the thing where it's like, it's not just talent, because somebody could be super talented, but they don't have any knowledge when it comes to creating like a brand for themselves and posting good pictures on social media or whatever it might be. And it's just like, then it's going to be so much harder for them to sell themselves to a label.
Well, and then it becomes frustrating for the label too, because people who are in that position of, I don't really know what to do, they put that on the label where it's like, okay, it's time to release your new single. Can you go hype it up on your socials? Well, how do I do that? You guys should do that. What do you mean? I got to do this? What are you talking about? It's like, oh God, are you joking right now?
Yeah.
I bet that must be happening less and less, because I think 2-3 years ago.
You'd be surprised.
Really?
Yeah.
Are they older people?
It depends. Like some people are older and they just never really adapted to the social world.
But young artists probably less than, because I remember 5 years ago I would meet a lot of like guitarists. Like I just don't do the whole Facebook thing, Instagram thing, and now more and more I see those types on Instagram, because it's like. It's pretty common knowledge now that like you got to exist on the internet.
But there's some people that just don't know how to do it and they feel awkward about it.
I know there's a couple artists I know that I meet out in the world where like you see them on their socials and you see that they're going through the motions.
Yeah.
But they don't get it in that there's some people where you're like, this Instagram's part of their life. There's a girl named Maya Gemma who I met at Fresh Island Fest. She's a super big personality in the radio personality in the UK, and now she's Stormzy's girlfriend. She's already many other things, but now she's also Stormzy's girlfriend. That's how many people. I guess it's a frame of reference.
Good thing for the resume.
she's gorgeous, but when you watch her stories, you would feel like she wouldn't go anywhere without. Like, this is part of her fabric of her. She's got a whole tone, and like legit, I watched her go from like 100,000 followers to like 1.1 million.
Nice,
because of like it. There's something authentic. You could almost like feel like she's like joyful to be like, can't wait to show them this. And then there's other people. It's like Friday. You're like, I didn't get anything from that. And so those accounts did stay the same. And I'm not an Instagram followers whore by any means. I just mean, you really have to like embrace this. People want to live life.
If you're trying to make mega fans, you have to give mega fans something to mega fan over.
Yes,
that's summed up perfectly.
Yeah,
like
pre-chance.
But it's also like a lot of times where artists that might be good at like, oh, here's my food and I'm on the beach and or whatever, like they can do the personal side of the socials, but when it comes time to like, okay, sell your new single and promote it, they don't know how to do that.
That's next level.
Totally.
Using socials as like an effective like actual marketing tool to actually market the thing that you want to market takes some like focus and control.
Or I've had artists even where we get a nice publicity hit where some, blog or magazine or something did a feature and did a big write-up, and then I send a link to the artist and say, hey, can you please post this on your socials and, give them a shout out, tag them, thank them or whatever. Say it in your own words. They're like, I don't know. I'm not doing that. I don't know what to say. I'm not going to post this. It makes it look like I'm pandering. Like, what? No, you just got featured in something. You should be like stoked about that.
And it's like they don't understand that it is a big deal.
Yeah, well,
you could quite easily, it could easily be somebody else.
But everybody, I've heard that a lot is, I'm just pandering to my fans at this point. It's like, well, then what the fuck are we doing here?
Exactly. That kind of sounds like you don't want to be an artist in the, you know what I mean? That you don't want to play the game. And if you don't want to play the game, then
one man's pandering is another man like telling your story.
Yeah, and that's why I like the way that a lot of the stuff that you do on your socials is it's natural. Like you're posting about this stuff that you're doing anyway, and you're an open book about what's happening in your career. So when it comes time to talk about a release, you're just talking about it naturally, 100%. Which works into promotion.
And for me, I'm on the high end, so I often compare it to living next to the guy with a megaphone. Like you don't want to live next to that guy because every day you wake up to, hey world, I'm out here trying to be this positive, intelligent force and talk about being creative. I say things like keep shining, and I'm trying if you live next to that guy, that can be a little bit annoying. But if that guy's intention is for the most number of people around the whole world to find out that this is his thing, well, that's sort of the thing, right? So I remember early on when I first ramped up my volume, this is even before I met you, let's say 2014 was when I really was like, oh, this is my opportunity to like, if I have anything special in here, this is the place where I can like broadcast that like a beam, and maybe people will follow it back to me. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
And you control it.
And I control it. Yeah. And I can troll it as well, right? Anyways, so I got into, and I remember early, I got lots of, sorry cuz, like from one of my cousins, had to unfollow you today, you post too much. And it's like, okay, no problem. And it's like, someone will see me at a show and they bitterly go, I don't know, man, I unfollowed you months ago, you post like motherfucker or whatever. And it's like, so that's cool, man, it's not for you. Because I'm trying to get seen from space. I want people in Germany to be like, yeah, I've heard of you. And by the way, I go places and be like, yeah, I heard of you. Yeah. Because it's like, I've been making a lot of noise for a long time and I never turn the light off. Every day you turn your Facebook on, the fucking light is shining. You know what I mean? And like, that's kind of been my thing. And I believe in this philosophy so thoroughly that I had to go through a cleansing period of like people not liking it. Yeah. Because it's like you put up a neon sign in the neighborhood and they're like, what's with the big neon sign? Kind of get used to it. I'm putting up some more neon signs soon. It's the first of many.
You've also learned where to do it and stuff because you scaled down your Instagram. So your Instagram is now it's basically a portfolio when it's only showing the really important moments that you want to feature. But your Twitter and your Facebook is essentially your megaphone. You know what I mean? Which I think is kind of the point.
Well, use them each differently. They're different tools.
Yeah. Reverse engineer them. Like a comedian recently hired me to help them get their social thing in order. And this had never come up. So when they asked, would you like audit my socials, how much would that cost? I was like, I don't know. So I just kind of, we kind of just did it off the fly. But it was fun to be like, what's your mission statement? Tell me what the thesis of you is. What do you want people to take away from it? Because then what I'll do is I'll go through it and I'll compare everything to that. Yeah. Are we at all saying that with the things that we're posting and saying and doing? And in their case, it was really pretty far off in some cases. And it's just like, if you think for me, my mission statement is like, I'm this music entrepreneur, I've got big ideas and occasionally like music releases as well. That's kind of like, I would say probably from top line, that's kind of what I would want you to know about me. You go to anywhere and if you focus grouped it, I feel like they'd walk away with a pretty good ratio of that being the takeaway of who I am, what I'm about, what I want you to know. And if you think about socials like that, for your business, like if we talked about on our business podcast, or for the music business, if you're a musician, and I think, all our hashtags promoting this one will be all music related, it's like, you want people to be able to easily identify who you are and what you're about,
and want to join you for the journey.
That's beauty is, you don't, join for the journey. I fucking love that. You don't need to be fake. The idea is never to sell out. Because whenever someone says to me like, well, I don't want to sell out, I'm like, I'm telling you to be more you.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Be all of the you. Mm-hmm. Leave none of the you off. I mean, you feel free to preserve some of it. We don't talk about our relationship issues. I mean, except on the podcast. But I mean, like, but be all of the you. If like, Action Bronson's the example I use.
I love Bronson.
He's a big fat, obnoxious chef who smokes all day. And what does he do? He just goes on the socials like, we may just make gourmet food and smoked the biggest blunt in history. Mm-hmm. And it's like so much him to love.
He's unabashedly himself.
Be unadulterated you.
Yeah.
That's the one I usually say. It's like, if you're like Meyer Clarity, right? Meyer Clarity is sarcastic and dry, and he's Jewish, but he makes Holocaust jokes. People don't know he's Jewish. He's just like, he's like the harshest dude in the world. And so it's like, then be all of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so people, when they look at it for a second, they're like, whoa, I just found the most sarcastic, like roasty rapper in the world. Like, and then, Graydon, another guy on our label, he's basically a walking GQ magazine cover. So it's like, when people, any minute that they interact with you, there should be some level of that takeaway.
Yeah.
This is about class and experience. And it's like, I'm very different than both of those things. And it's like, everything has to reflect that specifically. And by the way, if you're just a mom, do whatever. Post pictures of your kid. But if you're trying to use those platforms to launch something, I'm just saying this is how you do that.
Yeah. Well, and time for like a wicked callback to the beginning there.
so.
But
Tag up, we call it.
On that first phone call that we had before we met up with Tony, that's the things that I heard you talking to me about. It was a lot of what you're saying right now. And after that phone call, I was like, okay, this guy really gets it. I feel like I could get behind this. His music is quality. The production's there. The visuals are there. He's got a great head on his shoulders. He knows what he wants. He knows what he's doing. He's got a clear vision of what he wants to get out of this. And I can see that he's built a puzzle where I can walk in and drop a couple pieces into it. And now we've got something ready to go.
So that's the goal as an independent artist. You're trying to get to that spot where you're doing things and everything clicks, and it's almost like you don't need somebody. But the reality is, if you're on the come up by sheer math, you're gonna need people for things like connections and for experience, because you, by definition, can't have experience if you're still kind of coming into that place in your career. So it's like you have to kind of know all of the you things, and then go, okay, well, that's kind of where it stops. And then you go, okay, great. Well, we know all the non-you things.
Yeah. And then
we know the people, the places, the how. What I loved about you is you were like, give me the date you want to release your album and let me check how busy a time that is. It's like, you can't do that by yourself. Check how busy a time that is in releases. Mm-hmm. Like, you just kind of have to like throw a dart and kind of hope.
Well, it's because I had insight to all the releases we were doing, plus Universal's releases, and like you could forecast it.
I like to put things almost in a philosophical way, because for somebody coming from this independent space where this is all abstract to them, it's like, by sheer math, you can't have these things. Yeah. You can't have these insights. You're new and you don't have 1,000 releases this year. Yeah. So it's worth partnering with somebody, even just, you know what I mean? Why I say math? Like, you can't have this, so it's worth finding someone you trust who can. Yeah. A bigger player who can have these things and can provide some of that insight to you.
Yeah, and then like from after we met, I think it was the Only Cafe up on the Danforth was where we met with Tony for the first time. That was our first face-to-face meeting.
He's the best.
Yeah, Tony's the man, and you should get him on the pod soon.
Is he out of the music biz now?
No. He's running his own label, Acronym Records.
That's right. I couldn't remember exactly what he was doing.
Yeah, he signed an artist named Megan Nash, who's just been killing it internationally.
Do you know where I bumped into him? Was in Germany.
Yeah, Reeperbahn?
Reeperbahn in Germany. And it's funny, when you see somebody you know and you're on the other side of the planet, it takes extra time before you go say hi to them, because they're just like, don't be racist. Is that him? No, I'm joking.
Yeah, Tony's the best.
He's like an old white dude, but I was like, is that my old white dude? I haven't seen him in a year and a half. Like, is that... and yeah, it was him.
Yeah, so like for the challenge from our side of the fence at that point is after we had that meeting, Tony he was on board, but it was one of those things that he kind of put it on me. He's like, if you want to pursue this, I will support you.
I know, you always say that. Message received. I owe you one.
No. But I'm just...
No, I'm joking.
So I'm not trying to big up myself or anything, but I'm just trying to pull the curtain back to what the plights like from my side of finding something I want to work with. And then from there, after Tony kind of gave me his support behind it, I then had to go without any knowledge on your end. Sure. I then had to try to be the champion of you in the office to convince everyone else in the office that
I remember
we're doing
when you said
this.
that. You sent me an email and you're like, at some point, you were like, I need you to send me the first couple of songs and then we vote. And that was pretty, it's funny how we kind of talked about a bunch. We've kind of come back to the beginning, but that was really nerve-wracking to get an email where it's like, yeah, send us a couple songs and we're going to vote. Because you kind of know that happens sometimes, like when you submit for something that they're going to, even if it's a one-person vote, they're going to be like, yes or no. Yeah. But it's rare to be like, I love you. Like, this seems, and like, if this is like a relationship, it seems like we're gonna fuck. Like, that's where this is going. But then the person goes, send me 3 pictures of yourself naked. I'm gonna show my friends, and we're gonna vote.
And if we sign off, then we're good. Well, in a sense,
thank God his friends voted.
That's kind of how
his friends like your dick.
His friends voted to fuck.
Well, it went down to in a way where, at the time on the team, there was only a couple people that really knew anything about hip hop. Me being one of them,
and one goat, right? 3 people in the goat.
Yeah, you know. but it got to a point where people are like, okay, well, you're the one, like me and one other person on the team at the time were the ones that really knew hip hop.
Sure.
They're like, so if you think that this is worth it,
they
and
trusted you,
we'll get
yeah.
behind you, but you're the one that has to work it.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah.
no problem. That's what I want to do anyway. So then that's the story pretty much of how it all went down. And then from there,
story.
we worked together for, what was it, like 2-3 years?
Yeah,
before?
I think probably. Well, so that would have been 2015 to 2017.
Yeah.
At the Junos, you confided in me that there was some exciting stuff on the horizon for you.
Yeah, I had some.
We got super drunk together in Ottawa at the Junos. It was my first. I didn't go to the awards, but I did go to a bunch of the pre-parties and after parties. It was a fucking blast. And you were there, and then you intoxicatedly confided in me that somewhat you kept it pretty vague because you were like, I can't really get into it, but you were like, it's big and it's going to change things, which left enough to I was like, oh, so he's being coveted by maybe a bigger player in the game. And it wasn't too soon after that, in a couple of weeks, when you made the announcement that you moved to Olay.
Yeah. And
I had never heard of them, so I remember that day because like this is a major guy in my career, and you even when you announced it, you contacted me directly, and you're like, I'm gonna hand it off, everything's gonna be cool, and it very much was. But I remember Googling like who the company was and what they do, and it's just like, so even that, it's funny because that started me. That was around the time when I'm going to those first conferences asking people what publishing is. And I remember being like, I know this guy who went to one of these companies and I don't really fully get what they do.
Well, that's where, when I tell people that that's where I work, they're like, oh, so you're A&R for the publishing company? I'm like, no. They have a label as well. And I'm A&R for the label, and I'm building it up and working all the artists. And like, with Fontana, that's very much a distribution model where it's, pumping out a lot of releases for a large amount of artists. And at the time, they had Maple Music Recordings that changed their name to Cadence Music. And that was like the label side of it, where it was a similar thing to what I deal with now, where it's a smaller roster of artists that you do more for. And that's very much the vibe of what I deal with now, where it's a smaller stable of artists that I do everything for, and like myself and my team, and we just try to dig in the corners more so than just putting the releases out there onto the next one, which that's not what Fontana does either, but it's just a larger volume of releases going weekly.
It's everything's math.
Yeah.
More bands means less time.
Yeah, and
less bands equals more time.
And I get a question a lot too of like, what is A&R? And it's artist and repertoire is what it stands for, if people don't know. But there's external A&R and there's internal A&R, which that's sort of what my day is comprised of. The external stuff is the things that is the glorified, sexy part of it. Oh, I'm going out and scouting shows getting all these demo submissions and the things that people know about from movies and TV and stuff like that. And there's a portion of that stuff that happens, but more so it's the internal A&R where I'm dealing with the people that are on the label. I have to deal with everything around them, like getting the producer, getting a photo shoot done, getting the graphic designer,
following through, right?
Dealing with the creative.
That you guys have already scouted or whatnot.
Exactly.
And now you need to follow through
from A to Z.
To keep it in line with everything we've said is why it's so hard to get your attention, because it's like somebody you already fell in love 16 times and you're trying to make all those relationships work. So I'm like, hey, I got a pretty sweet ass over here too, and you're like, I hear you, but
I already got a lot. I got
12 over here, and 2 of them I want remix albums, and there's a lot to do.
Well, a lot of the stuff that I work with now is a lot of it we call like legacy acts. Like one of I'd say the flagship artists that I deal with is Rush, the
legends,
legendary Canadian trio. Tom Sawyer, Closer to the Heart, all those classic hits.
Up to the heart.
And the band.
That's all I can sing though. I don't want to pay.
The band's been on hiatus for a bit. Like they're not playing any gigs or anything. They're not broken up or anything, but they're just enjoying their lives.
So are they on the label side?
Yeah, label and publishing.
Didn't know that. I didn't. I mean, that makes sense from like some of the lyric video work we've done.
Yeah,
but I hadn't thought about that they were on your label side as well.
Yeah, so that's one of the legacy acts we deal with them, and like Stompin' Tom Connors, and those are things like he's passed away, but we're still keeping his legacy alive, dealing with the estate to come up with new products. And
his music is something, right? And it's like I make songs whenever I write. I've said this so many times on socials, and it's such like my intent is when you write a song, the goal is to write a song that hits some sentiment so perfectly that long after you're gone, you write a wedding song, or you write a breakup song, or you write a,
the hockey song,
fuck the authority song, or whatever the sentiment you nail.
Yeah.
So well that it's like when someone go through a breakup or you get married or whatever the thing is, 20, 30, 50 or 100 years from now, you would hope that they play it. Now the reality is when you really break it down, even at a certain point, those songs stop getting played too. So nothing's forever.
Yeah.
But you're trying to write those forever songs. And so it's interesting that you handle some of the forever aspects to someone like Stompin' Tom Connors, who's a legend, who it's not my kind of music. It's really classic old school Canadian music.
Yeah.
But my grandpa loved it, and even just from what's the right word? Like anecdotal. Like there's going to be times where it's necessary to play a Stomp and Tom Connor song. That's kind of how I think of it. Where it's
Still
like,
gets played every.
There's certain settings where you'd be like, this is when you'd play that.
Yeah, the hockey song gets played at every Maple Leafs games that ever.
You know, in movies and things, these songs have a place still. There's certain scenes and vibes where it's like these songs have to have a like who runs that, and so that the right people get paid. Whether it's so in that case, in most cases, is it that the kids still get the money that grandpa would have got at one point, or in some cases, am I right that sometimes somebody buys the catalog and it's like then the family they take a buyout and they don't get any more money?
It goes back to like it could be a deal with so many nuances and so many different ways.
Those are the two maybe ends of the spectrum.
In somewhat, like there's situations where it could work out where it's purchased outright. There could be just licensing situations where you're administrating the catalog and the image and the brand for a certain amount of time, and you're paying royalties back to the estate, or there's a million different ways a deal like that could go down.
Structuring the deal.
Yeah.
But essentially, in one case, the family's still getting paid.
Yeah.
And in other cases,
or they make one lump check,
and someone buys the catalog outright.
Yeah, though I'd say in a simple way, those are probably some of the more common ways that it goes down. But there's so many nuances and ways a deal like that could go down.
That's the goal, man. I want to write enough songs that someone is having this conversation about me. What's his catalog worth? I mean, I was thinking 25 million at all.
So I have a music question that's just more like a funny thought to have. So with music kind of going like a more like electronic route. I went to my friend's cottage, this summer, and I was kind of thinking like, what is like around the campfire music going to sound like in 20 years where the kids maybe don't know like the CCR songs, the Neil Young songs, like what other songs you sing around campfires?
I think they'll sing-songy songs that they do know. Because there's still, even today, things are very digital, but some of it's still sing-songy.
So that's what I was thinking. So I
around
wrote
the campfire, bitch better have my money.
Yeah, exactly.
It's pretty sing-songy.
I wrote the Lumineers in my notes because I was thinking like there's definitely like the hey-ho music that's popular right now would definitely be like campfire music.
Even like, and I don't think this is a great example, but just in terms of something that's like very, very popular and close enough that I bet kids would sing it at campfire is some even like Post Malone.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Congratulations.
See, but that's
you don't think a bunch of millennials wouldn't sing that on a campfire?
Yeah,
I could definitely see that.
That's
Or like
hilarious.
Ed Sheeran or something.
Or Ed Sheeran.
Ed Sheeran.
Different kids.
Sure.
Those are very different kids.
Yeah, different.
Less face tats on those kids. But.
Same kind of age group, I think, but different
Post
people.
Malone, though, like everything came second to the Benz, though.
Yeah.
Like that'd be so weird.
Well, it's
like
Benzo, babe.
Isn't it the Benz though?
No, it's Benzo.
What's Benzo?
It's a car, and I think it also might be a watch. No, that's something else. That's it's a different line.
Okay, but my line also makes sense. I just want to say
makes sense isn't when you get your lyrics wrong. The question is, did it make sense anyways?
You gotta remember NWA. Me and Lorenzo rolling in the Benzo.
Oh.
Okay, I can't
I
tell
always
you.
thought Benz was like a Mercedes Benz.
I can't tell you how many times a day I say, Jess, remember NWA.
Yeah, come on.
We're brushing our teeth, and she's doing something wrong, and I'm like, Jess, what did I say? Remember NWA.
Jess, I feel like you forgot.
I feel like you forgot about NWA.
Oh man, I remember. I got a question for you actually on one of the earlier podcasts where I got a little bit of a shout out because I think it was with Tynan actually. You guys were talking about how you've never met an Andrew that's not an asshole, and then you said, "I know somebody who's probably not," and you were pretty adamant that my name is Andrew, but it's not. I'm actually Andy, and then you said
Andy.
he's Andy because he's such an Andy. What makes me such an Andy? I'm curious.
Did I say it in a negative?
Yeah, no, I'm just curious.
I definitely meant it in a positive way.
I'm just curious, what makes me such an Andy? Like, I don't know.
You definitely are more of an Andy than an Andrew. I don't know. I think it's because I've met so many asshole Andrews that as soon as it was like, oh, maybe he's an Andrew, I was like, he's not a fucking Andrew because he's such a nice guy.
So that's what I
She
thought.
is spinning right now.
No, yeah.
You know why I think you're an Andy? You're a very I'll use casual or informal to describe you.
Right.
Like, because early on, I remember describing you to Meyer. I remember I used to pitch him hard to you early when we first met. I'm like, this kid's a fucking genius. And I would be like, man, he's really casual. You guys would get along really well. And like Andrew, somebody who calls himself Andrew knows Andy is an option and goes, Andrew. And
Right.
versus you're like, you know what I mean? Like you're a pretty like cash guy, and so it's like, hey, Andy's an option.
So your
Let's go
legal
with
name
Andy.
is Andy.
Andy, yeah, my birth
His parents
certificate, everything's
knew he was
Andy.
going to be this casual.
Is that common? Is there a lot of Andys out there?
Not that
are
I've
just
met.
Andys?
Most people that I meet that say that their name is Andy, I'm like, you're actually Andrew, aren't you? And they're like, yeah.
What came first, the Andy or the hen? Like, was he casual because he's Andy, or is he Andy because he's casual?
Ooh. Well, it was funny because I don't know how they ended up on Andy, but my parents were at different ends of the spectrum of what they wanted to name me. My mom wanted to name me Damien, and my dad wanted to name me Hank. So some way they landed on Andy. Like,
You are definitely way more of an Andy than a Hank or
wish
a
you were a
Damien.
Hank.
I don't know. Like,
It wouldn't be good.
King of the Hill was a good show.
It wouldn't
but
be
I don't
good,
know,
but I
man.
wish it. Also, ended up on Andy is a great band name.
Ended up on Andy.
It's a bad band name? No, it's a great bad band name is what I mean to say. It's a game we play around here. That's a great band name. That's a bad band name. That's a good bad band name.
Yeah.
It's part of my religion, so don't make fun of it.
So I've got some non-music
let's do
related
it.
Yeah, fire
questions.
it up.
Are we ready
we burned it
to
out.
jump into these?
We burned it out. Get it?
Yeah.
Sorry I was so quiet, by the way. I like to kind of just let you guys talk shop, and I had a couple
I
questions.
also
but I
also told you to keep your mouth shut.
keep
I
your
was
mouth
going to comment at some point, like, this happens so much where people just start nerding out on music and somebody just ends up sitting there not saying much.
No, and I think that happens sometimes depending on what guest we have on, and I think eventually it'll be well, you talk all the time.
I do.
was gonna say it
I talk a lot.
might be the other way around, where me
No,
and the guest are
there-
talking tons, and you don't have much to say.
When Maya was here, was probably the episode you spoke the most.
Yeah.
And I could see even guests that are even more in your wheelhouse that it would make sense for you to really like to run. But I do talk a lot, and that is a thing. Oh, Andy, what's really fun, just to say, to kind of before we move off this, is Jess isn't in the musical side really much. But when we kind of moved forward with Heavy Ox as being a team thing, and I brought Meyer on board and I gave him a piece of the label, and I brought Graydon on board and I gave him a piece, and Jess said, I want a piece. I want to do this too. And then you were really adamant. You're like, I want a contract. And I was like, Jess, we're about to sign a contract. It's called a wedding. And you own 50% of everything I do. But she even came, so she came to a writing session. And I remember saying, like, keep in mind, it's not easy. There's a lot of moving parts. You're trying to do a certain voice. It's like, we're telling a story. We're painting a picture all at the same time. What's the logical next line? And she's not a songwriter.
Yeah.
She comes, the first two lines, she submits her in the song. So it's like, she came out and she actively contributed easily as much as anybody else in the room.
Amazing.
And tomorrow we have our 5th writing session at the label, and you're coming for your second.
just to give a little context,
So I was
to you,
really. I'm not saying you're a dummy who came from under a
No,
rock.
no.
I just mean, I've been practicing for
all
years.
I said was just to give a little context, and then he's
you
just
did
like,
adjust the mic and sit up like, okay.
It's like, wow. Let me,
you did this.
let's unpack this.
You cracked your knuckles and shook your head, so I knew something was coming.
No, but just to give a little context, we've talked about this before, is that I wrote like a lot of poetry growing up, which I know
Really
is
bad
not the same.
poetry.
No, not at all.
I never read it at all. I'm just
I won
joking.
poetry awards in
In a very small town.
in a small town in high school for sure.
No other contestants in the contest.
And have continued writing ever since,
you're
and
a
have
great
written
writer. I
everything
joke.
from poetry to novels to short stories
Stand-up
to
comedy.
stand-up comedy,
Yeah, I
all
joke.
that stuff.
I know,
So
you're the best.
I'm not a songwriter by any means, but I do think that if in a group setting, I'd be able to contribute at least a little bit.
Whenever you do something well and someone else goes, I'm going to do it, I always come from a place of heads up. There are people who are 12 years in and still learning.
Yeah.
So come in being humble.
Oh, for sure,
So that's
for
all,
sure.
all I meant.
Yeah.
And then, to be honest, you just did more than I anticipated out the gate. Because you were like, what about this? And I remember thinking, well, that's the perfect line. So we should probably
For
just write
sure.
that down.
I think I do have a little bit of defensiveness on it, and it's only because like even with like the comedy thing, like people
Yeah.
are like, "Oh, you're doing comedy? That's so crazy." I'm like, "Is it
No,
crazy though?"
It is crazy. Comedy's
Because-
really hard to do.
It is
It's
hard.
really
No, for sure,
terrifying.
and like thank you for everybody thinking.
marrying
thinking
you,
that
and
it's
I
awesome
was
that I'm
really
doing
blown away by it.
But at the same time, it's just like I've been doing I did theater my whole life as a kid. You've met my family. My family's all
How many
like
years since
crazy.
you've done theater?
Yeah, it's been a few years.
This is the thing. It's like when songwriters go, well, when I was young, I was creative. Yeah, along with all other kids who weren't abused. You know what I mean? It's like, all I'm saying is
Yeah.
like, I think for most of your adult life, you are a normie or a Reggie. Somebody who's just like regular. And like, I mean, like
Yes.
you, like not somebody's going, I'm thinking of getting into stand-up comedy. And so when you do that, it really is shocking. Somebody who's in your life, because she said to me earlier, I have little dreams of being a stand-up comic. But that's the kind of thing that like 9 out of 10 people say and don't do for good reason.
Yeah.
Because it's thankless, impossible to do. You got to do it every day for 10 years where you're good at it. There's a lot of reasons why people don't do it. Not because you're shitty, you know what I mean? So I just never took it seriously as something she's going to actively do, because most don't. Most people go, I would be good. And what they mean is they're clever. They could do it. They think about doing it. And so when you were like, I'm going, or I went, I can't remember which it was. I was just like, really? Like, you're going to go out to a place and do it?
Yeah.
And so as somebody who knows you and like believes in you enough to like tie myself to you, even I was like, for real? For real?
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm just saying, I think don't be too defensive.
Yeah.
Everyone thinks, and like everyone thinks I could be in a movie. So when someone goes, I'm going to LA to try, you go, what? Because it's just like,
yeah, for sure.
You don't mean you're shitty. It's just like, we all think it. You're going to make the fucking swing for it?
Yeah.
Well, in a sense, that's kind of what a lot of the people that I hung around with in my hometown, when I moved to Toronto and said that I got a lot of people laugh at me and they're like, yeah, of course you will. All right. Yeah. You know, it's kind of the same thing. You just got to go in and go all for it.
Yeah, I think like you said, it is because it's one of those things that a lot of people say they're going to do it. And the differentiating factor is whether you go do it or don't.
Because I bet if you did like an experiment, there's no way to do this experiment, where you tell these friends, like, you're doing something that's really good, but like they know people who do it, even if it pays well, they're generally like, cool, good idea, that pays well. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm gonna get into this like trade, tool and die. Tool, that's a good example, because you make crazy money, $250,000 a year.
A lot of the trades, crazy money.
So you say, I'm gonna get into tool and die. Oh yeah, that's great money, man. Really smart choice. It's like, but you're like, I'm gonna be a stand-up comic. Like, for real? You're gonna go to like Toronto and be a comic?
Yeah, it is an extra. Yeah, at least specifically with stand-up, it's just like, I'm not going to quit my job and do stand-up. You know what I mean? It's just like, I'm going to do stand-up on the side to see how it goes. You know what I mean? So it's a little bit, it is almost like an extra thing.
And
where it's
you're a little bit easing in right now, but I'm sort of using it as an example of somebody who's like communicating that they're going to make a try for it, and then therefore the reaction to, I'm going to make a try for it. You know what I mean? Because you're right. You're not really like putting everything else on hold.
But even the comedians that we know who are doing really well in Toronto,
Mike moved to Toronto, and he's told us about like how people were like, kind of doubtful, and he's a fucking genius.
Yeah. But I was just going to say that a lot of them still have other jobs as well, because it's a hard thing to do.
There's no money.
And I think that's why it's people shocked that it's like, oh, you're going to go do that, because it's just like people are very, career oriented, and they're just like, oh, like you can't just do that, like what's your backup plan, like. And I'm sure you experience that a lot with hip hop as well.
And a lot of comedians would say you got to spend 10 years grinding through open mics and things like that before you even make any kind of substantial money.
Exactly.
And even that substantial money isn't like 10 years into industry money.
Yeah. Exactly.
Into any other industry.
Yeah.
While we're on the topic, I'll say what I like about comedy and what kind of motivated me to want to do it is that as much as like, yes, you do have to do it for 10 years to kind of get good at it or whatever, during that time, like during the time that I'm in right now, which is at the very, very early stages, there's very little barrier to entry. If you want to go to a bar down, like especially like a dive bar that's having like a comedy night, it's like anyone can do it. I see some guys go up there, they're just drunk. They don't even have anything written.
Yeah.
They're just drunk guys. So there's no barrier to entry. If you want to do it, just go do it. No one's going to tell you you're not good enough. You can do it. You know what I mean? The worst thing that's going to happen is no one laughs. That's like the worst thing that's going to happen. And that happens to me in everyday life. I make a joke that doesn't land.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it.
It's like, that's literally the worst thing that can happen.
It's not 0 to 100. It's 0 to 10, 20, 30.
Yeah.
You're enjoying the growth and getting better. It's like, and even when we talk about it privately, and I'm always like, hey, remember, just like keep in mind, it's a long haul to get to the place of these comics that we idolize, right? Yeah. And in interviews, someone will go, how long have you been in it? And they go, 7 years. And you go, yeah, you sound about 7 years in. Like, you're not a rookie, but you don't have the like effortless like finesse like that like Louis C.K. has.
Yeah, for sure. And the difference to me between putting it all out there as far as music wise and what it be for comedy is music wise, you kind of see a little bit of the success, especially with online. It's just like the views aren't there maybe if you're not at a certain level. Whereas comedy, it's just like literally none of you guys know how good I'm doing or how not good I'm doing right now. You know what I mean? I mean, obviously, other than the fact that I'm not like booking big shows, but I just mean as far as like me doing successful that night, it's just like it really just matters who's in the room at that moment and how many laughs you're getting. So it's just like it's almost like therapeutic to me, where it's just like it feels very low commitment, and it's just like
Yeah,
you
it's
know what I
good.
mean?
I
Like
like
I
it.
could go there, and to me, I could go up and tell jokes that only I find funny, and it would still be worth it to me.
Yeah,
Like, you
interesting.
know what
I like
mean?
to hear that.
Which isn't the case.
Well, and even if you go,
isn't the case.
even if you go do a set and you bomb, you're gonna take away so much knowledge from that
Exactly,
bombing experience
exactly. That's
to
what
be
they
able to
say, do the
retool
time.
your set and like you get so much out of it, even though it
Timing,
wasn't a
voice,
success. you know?
enthusiasm.
Totally.
I overpronounced. I underpronounced it. It was funnier.
Yeah.
All those things you have to learn.
Or I got to move this part to this,
Yeah.
and like swap that around, and just the setup punch wasn't there the way it should have been.
And you know,
like,
you said how that's different than music. It is, but I would argue, I would encourage young artists and a young me to follow your route, like in comedy, in that develop quietly and then present. Because unfortunately, I think there's a myth that you're supposed to just like grind it out and then post those songs. And it's like, I don't think anyone ever told people to do that. It's just like what they do.
well, they just don't know any better.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's very self-serving. Like it feels good to post it, and one of your friends goes, "Keep going," and it's like, and one of my biggest mistakes was like before you met me, I put out 7 bad albums.
yeah.
Because and they're not all bad; they were progressively better, but they should have been behind the scenes, me learning, present to the world. And so I remember early on, and I still get some of this, but I think I've shooken most of this off now. Fire Breather, I got a lot of this, and then as I went, I got a lot of it and less of it, where it's like, hey, haven't heard you in a while. In fact, actually, I did. Let me talk about this case specifically because this is way more, I can be very specific. For Anti-Gravity, there's a radio DJ from Halifax named Alex. Not from Halifax, but he's just from the East Coast, named Alex. The Underground Vault is his radio show. And he said, last album I listened to yours was 4 years ago, and it was garbage. Did not like it.
You know,
I don't think he
which
said
album
garbage.
was he talking about?
I would guess he was talking about Proof of Life, which was not complete. It's not the worst album I ever made, but it was definitely me still finding my voice. I was
Yeah.
still trying to be my favorite rapper instead of becoming the best me, you know?
For sure.
And he's like, he didn't say garbage. He was nicer than that, but he was like, didn't like it, didn't like your voice, didn't like what you were doing, didn't like where you were going with it, I did not like it at all. He's like, so then when somebody shared, I stumbled across Anti-Gravity. The album cover is really cool. Shout out to Justin Main, also doing my next album cover. And he's like, so I just put it on, expecting it to be bad. It's the album of the year.
Nice.
And it was just like, so I get a few of those still, but that's the best case scenario because I put out so much garbage music early in my career where the lesson really is like, be self-aware. It's unlikely you're Kendrick. It's unlikely that at 18 years old, you're the rap god. Maybe. And ask some people around you and find out. But likely you're like me and you're good and you're showing potential, and that potential by people who don't know better can be confused with, oh, you have it. No, you have something. Refine that thing and find it. Because I can't tell you how many years I got like, don't like your music at all, and then I got better, and I'm like, listen to the new song, and they're like, you're still trash. It's like, you didn't listen. I'm really put the work in. I've really found myself.
Well, a lot of times that first impression is hard to shake off.
It is.
Whatever the first perception somebody has of you, that's usually what sticks.
So let's bring it back to me.
Sorry.
So
didn't
basically,
mean to do that. I'm
no,
just
it's okay.
I'm just a
So basically,
sociopath.
what you're saying is you think that's a good thing that I haven't been promoting that I'm a comedian.
And I've said that.
right
I haven't
now.
come for that
Yeah.
reason
Yeah.
too, because I want you
Yeah.
to have the freedom of like, almost, when you're in your head, you can think anything.
Yeah.
When you go to those open mics, it's your head.
Yeah, you got to tool it out before
Yeah,
you can.
totally.
And then-
I haven't invited anyone to the show yet. I'm definitely
Which is
going to
smart.
do like one where
And I
I
can't
invite
wait.
everybody.
Mind if I get another?
Yeah, of course. And I cannot wait. And to be honest, I've said this to you before. Me not coming, I almost want you to take that as a sign of respect because I think long term you could really do this, and I want you to have the time to develop.
No, it's
that
better.
thing.
And this won't be a shock to anybody, but Anthony's actually super judgmental of comedy and of my comedy. So having him not there is actually like really good for now because then it's just like I can build the jokes in a way. And then also when I actually finally do show him my set, I'll be really confident in what works and what doesn't work. And if he's like, oh, I don't like that one, I'll be like, well, guess what? It did good 12 times
Now-
out of 13.
So what do you know?
So yeah, exactly. So
The
it's
flip
like,
side to me being judgmental.
Yeah.
Have I not also been a skilled and helpful
Yes, of course.
sounding board for jokes?
Of course,
Because you'd
of
be like,
course.
here's my concept. And I'm like, fucking love the concept. But it's sort of a premise, and I want to know your take on it now.
Yeah.
And then you're like, yeah, you're right. And you probably would have got to that anyways.
No, yeah, for sure.
I'm just saying that because we love comedy, and we'll pause a stand-up special, and like even before you were doing comedy, and be like, what's she talking about?
yeah.
Because we're such big comedy fans, we're just like,
Yeah.
have you established what's she getting at here?
Yeah,
it's
for
like she's
sure.
being very vague, or that's just I'm being vague myself, trying
Yeah.
to like give an example, or I'll be like, that's a pretty hacky joke
Oh, for
right
sure.
there. Like they're really funny, but that's
I
a
would
hacky
say
joke.
it's 85% positive our with our discussions on it and our kind of workshopping my stuff, and the other 15 I think would get me in my own head. So it's good that you're not coming to see my shows because the other 15 would kind of make me think, oh, maybe this isn't such a good joke, but maybe it works for other people. It just doesn't work for you. You know what I mean?
With all talents, probably comedy the most, but also music or anything else, is even if it's bad, you don't get good without going through the bad joke.
Yep.
It's not go around it, like wait it out. It's through it. You need to like tell the best joke you can come up with and be like, if that's my best joke, that's not good enough to be my best joke. Because bringing it to music and keeping this kind of parallel going, when me and Tynan from Philly Moves met, he was the most famous rapper that I was friends with. Philly Moves is having a really good run, and he played me his new album. And I remember saying to him, "You're killing it." I don't think any of those songs are hits though.
Right.
Because it's like we're trying to do like that level. So it's like always trying to keep that in mind. And by the way, you should hear what I say about my own albums at the time. I was just like, I'm trying really hard, but I don't hear any fucking hits here. And so you're just always like going through the motions, and you can't get to the hits until you write all these other songs or jokes, and you go, okay, so that one was good because it really captured the emotion, but the song title was awkward. Okay, but this song was good because the title was cool and the concept was cool, but we never really nailed the sentiment. So what happens if we marry those two things? And you can do the same thing with a joke, where the timing, the voice. And for example, you talked a little bit about who you are on stage in the ways that's different than the real you. And those two things will come closer, and you'll refine the you on stage.
Yeah. Can I talk about that for a second?
Go, what's the funniest version?
I don't know. I shouldn't try to describe how people perceive me, but I think people generally perceive me as like a more like down to earth, like chill tomboy.
You're one of the
type
most likable people I've met in my time.
I'm like so likable.
No, but people, all your friends generally will say like, if someone doesn't like you, there's something wrong because you're kind of like the nicest person. So
right.
Anyways.
So the kind of voice that ended up happening when I went on stage was kind of not that, which is funny. And I think it's just because of the type of humor that I like. So I like dirty jokes and like whatever type of jokes. And it kind of turned into a little bit of like a Valley Girl thing,
right?
Which is weird because that's not really exactly who I am, but it kind of turned into a little bit like more like, I don't even know how to like, without doing a joke, I don't even know how to like give an example of it.
It felt a little almost like snarky too.
Yeah, the tone of it is very just like, and that's so what I did, and so like whatever. Like that's kind of like the tone that I kind of got into, and I haven't exactly found the balance yet of between that and between who I am, you know what I mean? Like, and I think that it'll meet somewhere in the middle.
It will,
because I think I'll still have a stage voice that's like not exactly who I am. And a lot of comedians that we watch on podcasts and stuff, they talk differently on the podcast than they do on stage.
But I would say the most successful. It's really close.
It's close.
Yeah, but if you look at like a comedian, say like Eliza Schlesinger, she takes like that kind of Valley Girl persona and over amplifies it to 100 to make comedy around it and injects her personality around it.
Yeah, that's totally possible too.
Yeah,
is it can develop into this whole thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and at some point, that's the other thing. It's like you haven't been in long enough to make the decisions. How much will be persona, or will you be a Janine Garofalo type where you just like take a second, it's like you breathe deep in the mic, like, and it's all real. Guys, like, I'm fucking getting old. I got great pubes. And it's like, that's very different. Like, the way you even say that, like, we're just like, oh, fuck.
But even you bringing her up, was it Eliza? Yeah, I always can't pronounce her name for some reason.
Andy Hawke, considering he has such a short last name, is very good with last names.
Good with names sometimes.
It's funny because I think that when I go on stage, I'm maybe thinking of female comedians that I've seen and stuff. And I kind of automatically go into this, like, this is a female comedian voice. And I think that that's something that I need to, like, break through.
We got to find your own voice.
Yeah, exactly. I don't need to be a female comedian on stage.
But that's
I just
what all
need
comics
to be
say
me.
too.
Yeah,
like
for
every
sure.
comic we love, because we listen to so much podcasts and YouTube videos where they interview each other and all that stuff. And every comic we love, they'll even have these combos where they go, "Who did you sound like for the first 3 years?"
Yeah,
and they go, "Oh, well, obviously I sounded like Bill Burr or whoever, like the guy was,
or Jim Carrey or whatever."
There's like somebody that was big when they were, and it's like. It's such a thing where you start off doing an impression of your favorite comedian, and then what happens so often in those stories is they get roasted by some other comic being like, relax on your Dane Cook impression. You know what I mean? And then you go, oh my God, that is my favorite comic, and you like all the blood runs out of your face and everyone, I've been exposed. And then you learn from all those, and that's a really harsh way, but the other way is self-awareness to like find your own thing in that.
Yeah,
like,
definitely.
What do you love about that voice that, like, let's say you were doing Eliza and you're not, but let's say you were. What do I love about that voice that I can take back into my own voice?
Totally.
And what's unique about me that people from all this time on stage find funny about me? It's my tomboyness, maybe. It's your take. It's like, because you do kind of go to them with your hat on backwards. There's a little, so maybe it's like that version of this becomes your starting point for your voice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, can I tell you a really funny thing too about the hat? Just because you mentioned the hat on backwards. So I went to a comedy show downtown. I think it was at the Garrison, and me and like all the other, I think it was like four out of 6 female comedians all had backwards baseball caps on, and I'm like, oh,
Get
this
the memo?
yeah, exactly. I'm like, this is
league
definitely
of
a
their
thing.
own.
But hey, like in my defense, you can go back on my Facebook. I am a hat person. I fucking love
So you're
wearing
saying
hats.
is you didn't wear a hat just to fit in.
I didn't wear it to be like I'm a cool female comedian. It's
Tur-
like no, I
turns out
actually.
you're just not as original as you thought you were. That's
Yeah,
all.
exactly.
You were being you, but turns out you are just not original.
I like hats.
Well, that's the beautiful thing with comedy too, though, is like even like the trying to find your voice and like being a replication of some other comedian that you're kind of have in your head.
Yeah.
You can tackle that subject head on stage and almost create a joke out of that
Yeah.
instead of like skirting around it and trying to work around it and figure
Totally.
it out. You can go, like you said, go right through it with the crowd and be like, yeah, I know I'm doing my shitty, impression of whoever right
Yeah.
now, but and then work it
Yeah,
into something like,
totally.
until you do develop.
Yeah, I love like calling out the obvious.
Yeah.
In I think it was on what's his name, the podcast that you made it weird. What's his name?
Oh my God, from Crashing.
Crashing.
Holmes, Pete Holmes.
Pete Holmes. He's talked about early in his career doing a show where his friends were in the front row, and he pretended he didn't, like, these are like strangers in the crowd, and he used that as an example of a pretty subtle thing that like the crowd would know right away, but over the course of the show they start to feel that like he knows these people.
Yeah, these 4 people are laughing harder than anyone
And
else.
it's like they can all map that out. There's something going on here, and he used that as an example of a subtle version, because I think there's less subtle. For example, every female comic on the show wearing the same hat.
Yeah.
Not very subtle. Crowd's thinking about it.
Yeah.
So he used that as an example of being like, I should have just said, sorry everybody, staff meeting in the front of the room, because these are his coworkers. We'll get back to the show later, and they all
Yeah.
laugh about it.
Just go
Now
head on with it.
You've addressed the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
Totally.
So, for example, if that ever happens again, I would honestly be in the back writing jokes about like a league of their own and shit, where it's just
Yeah.
like we're a softball team. We
Yeah.
lost our fucking. It's like, and by the way, I'm just like being a dick right now. I just
Yeah.
mean because that's the fun thing to be like, oh great, I'm the 3rd female comic wearing a hat, and what Pete Holmes says is, not only should you is avoiding it. Your stat can't go that good because they're all going, is she going to talk about the hat? Is she going to mention it?
Yeah.
She looks just
Yeah.
like, and then instead of it being awkward, you cash in on them thinking about it, and it's a fucking grand slam that you couldn't have even written. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? And that's,
totally.
he kind of gives a version of that on one of his episodes. Shout out Pete Holmes, a big fan of that podcast.
Yep.
We're big podcasters here.
Oh man,
Do you listen to podcasts too? What else do you listen to?
I listen to a lot of comedian podcasts. It was actually comedians that got me into podcasting
So
to
who do you
begin
listen
with. Like some of my favorite podcasts, I listen to Bill Burr, Bert Kreischer. I love Bert Kreischer.
Do you
He's
do the
hilarious.
open tabs and everything?
Yeah, I listen to everything.
I
It's
haven't
good.
quite moved to open tabs. I mostly enjoy his interviews.
No, but it's funny hearing him riff on stuff.
Open
It's
tabs
good.
is a lot of content. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like it's a lot of
Just
Bert
him.
Kreischer.
But
A
it's
lot of Bert Kreischer.
But it's him being super goofy.
Yeah, he
so
is.
it's like if
Yeah.
you like
He's very
him,
silly.
he's going over the top in those things.
Totally. What else you got?
Tuesdays with Stories, Joe List and gapping on his other.
I've heard of it.
Mark Norman is Norman is hilarious.
Yeah, he is funny.
Yeah, they're those and those,
I've heard of that podcast,
Those
too. I
guys
think they
playing
came on
off
Joe
each
Rogan.
other are really really funny. Ari Shafir.
Do you still listen to Skeptics? I fell off Skeptics when he traveled and he stopped doing it for a minute.
Yeah,
I kind of fell off it.
I don't.
and-
I
Is
still.
that the Ari Shafir one?
Yeah, I still have it in my list, and I won't download every episode. But if I see one that's like, okay, I'll get this one. I know there's more. I'm
If you
scapping
enjoy
on
this
more.
podcast at all, probably because like even like music, like we have influences, right? Like Joe Rogan really changed my life as a guy and intellectual once upon a time, and just that he was interviewing people about things I had never heard talk about.
Yeah, Rogan. I can't listen to all of it. It's
He's a
too
lot.
much. It's
He's
too
a lot.
much. Like,
And Rogan's a little Rogan-y for me. He's too bro-y for me at times.
but there's some people that come on where I'm like, I
But
need to hear
what
him
he
talk to
did
them.
in terms of, because let's rewind a minute. I was living in the UK. First person I discovered was Kevin Smith, because I'm a big Kevin Smith fan, and I liked his genuine. He talks about fucking his wife in the ass, and he's got a small dick. Like, it was just something so raw. I'd never heard that, so I fell in love with Kevin Smith's podcast. But it's somewhat shallow in that he doesn't go anywhere further than that.
Yeah.
So at a certain point, it kind of ran its course. But what happened was Kevin Smith appeared on the Joe Rogan podcast and then talked about it on his podcast. So I went and downloaded it, and then. What I fell in love with was not Joe Rogan's broiness, because even today I'll have it on the other room and I'm like, oh, Jesse's doing it again, because he's just being like a martial artist even when talking about social issues, and it's not the right angle and all this.
Yeah.
But I had never seen anything like it where he would sit down, almost like, to be honest, tonight was a Joe Rogan episode. In terms of all of my influences, was the closest one we've done, where we spoke to somebody about their skill level, and we're like getting philosophical about it, and what does it mean, and how does that compare to this? And I had never had that. Like Larry King kind of did that, I guess, with people that I didn't care about.
Right.
And so that's what I fell in love with. And so that's always going to mention that's an influence here. And then the other side is probably Tiger Belly.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You listen to Tiger
Bobby Lee,
I don't know
Tiger
much,
Belly.
but I
I
have heard
love it.
It's
so
just so
much.
silly, and there's nothing going on except the silliness, and so we try to exist in between those two.
Well,
things.
the one podcast that is my number one favorite podcast that is just 100% silly and craziness just for the sake of craziness is Legion of Skanks, Big J Okerson,
Yeah,
and Dave
Jay's
Smith,
a genius.
and Louis J. Gomez. And
One of those three guys is sketchy AF.
Louis J. Gomez.
Is he the one?
Yeah, he's got his own podcast. It's called the Real Ass Podcast. He's over the top, but he's just so
Well, they're all kind of
ridiculous.
sketchy, but Big J, I like Big J the most. Of those
Yeah,
three.
he's one of my favorite comedians.
When do you listen to your podcast? Like, when do you find your...
It's always when I wake up first thing in the morning, like after I, get through the, snoozing of the alarm many times, then I'll throw on a podcast as I'm getting ready.
Oh, cool.
Oh, interesting.
And then
it's so funny how everyone has such different routines.
I do that too.
That
I
would
just-
not be
I
a
don't
moment
go
that I
out
would, I don't
anywhere, but
think.
when I get up and make breakfast, I put on YouTube on the TV. I put a podcast.
Yeah,
on.
well, it's because I live alone too, so it's like when I wake up, it's just like, all right, well, let's throw this on and crank this up while I'm getting ready, and then I just pop it in the earbuds when I'm on the transit to get to work, and that's usually in transit or first thing in the morning is when I listen to podcasts the most.
Yeah.
Or if I'm just like, or if I'm cooking or cleaning or whatever, I'll throw that on, and I'll get through one or two podcasts just from cleaning the house and cooking dinner and stuff.
Do you listen to them like when you go to bed at all, or are you
No,
more like a
no.
silence in bed
We
type
started.
person?
We started listening to podcasts when we go to bed, and I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I
can't,
find it hard to go to bed without it.
My brain just when I go to bed, it's like I'm done. Like
We're
can't
fighting the
have
voices
anything.
in our heads, though. So
No, that's
you're more at
actually...
peace with yourself, and that's good.
You're joking, but it's 100% true. I find it difficult to go to sleep in silence because it's like then I'm like thinking about all these stressful. I'm thinking about work. I'm thinking about like the video I have to do the next day. Whereas if I put on a podcast, I can kind of like slowly drift off while I'm listening to some weird science podcast. Like
I don't know. I'm really good at like going to sleep the second I hit the
Good for
pillow.
you. That's
great.
healthy.
Yeah, like if I listen to something, it keeps me up, and then I'm tossing and turning, and it's just because I can't shut down because I'm still being like stimulated by whatever I'm hearing.
Yeah, that's fair.
Speaking of going to sleep, I think we should wrap up pretty soon.
Yeah.
We're bordering on our longest podcast ever, which is a good thing. I would like more to do that and come over 2 hours than come under 2 hours, but we've blown the runway.
Yeah, went on some tangents.
No,
I hope we covered your question.
We did, and it,
Yeah,
honestly,
definitely.
I think this is my favorite episode. And and honestly, like you listen, I don't say that at the end of every episode, and I don't even mean like you shit on all other guests. You guys sucked. I just mean we really we blacked out there for a minute and had some really great conversations. And I was getting I was probably more like, oh my God, he just said this thing that makes me want to ask this question, because we've never really spoken to somebody about their expertise. We're having our favorite people to hang out with on, which I want to keep doing because those are my favorite people to spend time with. But what we tried today that I want to do more of, and probably because I'm such a big Joe Rogan fan and have listened to so much of that, is talking to somebody who has knowledge we don't have on a subject we like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, then I could talk for 6 more hours.
Well, and it's pretty special,
About that.
specialized focus too, right?
Yeah.
Like I've worked full time in music for the last 14 years of my life. Like I haven't had a job outside of working in the music business for 14 years.
You started when you were 6. You're very young and handsome.
Well, thank you. Well, I started playing in a band when I was 15, and then from there it started turning into booking, to promotion, like throwing my own shows, and then it just bred into management, into marketing, into label. It's just been a growing progression the whole way. But people say that I'm lucky, and I feel like luck has a part of it, but I've also worked my fucking ass off to live my dream job. Like
That's what they say. I heard somebody say I've been really enjoying these actor-on-actor interviews on YouTube recently, and somebody's like, the key to success, work hard and then get lucky, right?
Yeah,
It's you got to do both.
Well,
those things.
I can't remember the exact saying, but there's like opportunity is when, or no, luck is when opportunity makes
Preparation.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Preparation H. That's the new slogan.
What time are we at right now?
We're approaching 2.5 hours.
Well, right before we
Oh,
sit down,
really?
I just
Wow.
want to.
That's what I mean. We don't have to stop now. But we have
address
to
these-
move in the direction.
So when
of
I
rapping.
was asked, my sister was over at my house when I told her I was going to be on the pod, and I said I gotta get something for the wall, and she jokingly said, "Well, you could use these to punch up the wall." Classic.
Hey.
Shout out to my
Boom.
sister
Pow.
Amanda.
And we're gonna do
Love
that.
you.
That's
and
going
then
on the wall.
because you're one of the only people I know that jet sets around the world, and you didn't end up coming to our summer party, which these were the door gifts.
Oh,
on the way
amazing.
out.
Amazing.
I think that this is probably going to be useful for you. It's a universal wall plug that's got the Ole logo on it.
Hey, that's
But
that's
works-
a really
that's a great
smart.
gift.
It works for every territory. It's
I know all about these.
Yeah, it comes
I like that it
apart,
has a
like,
USB attachment. That's
you
so
got-
key.
It's for every territory. You can pull out.
That's such
like,
a smart,
each of them, and
That's a great branded like
favor.
office
Yeah.
swag type.
well, for artists that travel a lot,
Yeah.
a universal plug, could help.
And honestly, even when you have one, because I have one right now, but I've burned through like 3 in the last 2 years because you leave them in walls at Airbnbs and
Yeah.
stuff. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
always highly necessary. Yeah, we don't have to like jump there with a second, but let's move in that direction. So first of all, thanks for coming through.
No problem, man.
Thanks for on the record. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for your contribution. Thank you for everything you taught me in that time. Thank you for continuing to actively be one of my resources in the music business, even if it's like, hey man, can I ask you a question? Because like having those answers to questions. If you're on the inside, you don't even know, man. If somebody who's not had anybody answer any of their questions ever, having a phone a friend is like fucking invaluable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I appreciate having a couple of those, and you're on a very short list of them. So much appreciation. Thanks for coming and being a part of the podcast. And thank you for listening to the podcast. Because whenever I talk to you and you're like, hey, you said this on the podcast, I watched that show too. And I'm always like, that's fucking dope that you listen. Because we recently crossed 100 subscribers to the audio podcast. I don't know if people talk about that. I don't think they do, but I'm really proud of that.
Yeah.
It's hard to get the audio subscribers because they got to put it on their apps.
And I only listen to audio, by the way. I remember you guys asking in one point. I've only ever listened on audio because that's where I do it all. Just
We
through
know
the
the
app.
ratio of numbers because we can see the data, but it is fun to find out when someone listens, like how do you listen, right?
Yeah.
But not the point I'm making is we're the listeners building, but not all of them are people that you work with and respect in the business. So it's cool.
I appreciate
to have
that,
those
man.
things
And
coexist.
For me, it was just, with any project I work on with an artist, I'm always just like, to me, it's not about me. It's not about me getting anything out of it. It's what I get out of it is from a fan perspective of just assisting this artist doing whatever the hell they want to do. That's what always got me stoked on working in music. And I feel like a lot of the times when people like Maestro or whatever gave you a good recommendation about me, that's a lot of what it comes from, is because when I sit down and talk to these artists, I'm still talking as a stoked fan that's just like, I'm as hyped up about their music as they are because I want to see it happen. And then I can bring some business side knowledge to that as well. But I can still communicate the way that an artist communicates.
Yeah, you're a good middle ground, right? Because you know the music. Yep, one foot in both, right?
Yeah, I started playing in a band, so I know the plight that a lot of bands. Bass. Played bass.
Of course you
yeah.
play bass.
But yeah, I played in a band for a
That
while.
was one of my early on questions in this that we
That's okay.
we just dived
We
past
fucking
it.
steamrolled it. We shouldn't get into it completely, but it was funny when you reminded me that Andy came out to my album release party that we just had with the band, right? And he saw my band, and he's like, Adam, my drummer, who's like one of the fucking best guys in the world. He's like, yeah, my last show your last show was opening for his band?
Yeah, the last show my band ever played was at the Foundation in Barrie. And he was in a band called Theory Astray who was headlining the show, and my band was direct support for
small
his
world,
band. Yeah.
What was
Shout
the
out-
band called?
We were called Scapegoat, but we ended up changing the name to Of the Wicked right near the end.
What kind of music?
It was metal.
That name change is really what did the band.
Of the Wicked. I don't know how I needed to ask what kind of music, but
Well, shout out to Of the Wicked.
Yeah, well,
We're gonna have sex to their last album tonight.
You won't find any of it online.
None of it? None of it
unfortunately.
anywhere?
No, it's too. I wish.
Okay. Well, we'll dream. Maybe I'll do a rendition of it.
Yeah.
Unplug later. Thanks for coming. You want to do your little outro, guy?
I mean, yeah.
Anything you want to say?
Thanks as always to lyricvids.com.
The web's #1 lyric and animation video company.
Hey!
And
Things have been going really good at Lyric Vids lately, so great job there.
yeah.
And if you're an artist and you're listening, hit us up. And here's what I do want to say. If you're listening, I would love you to interact wherever you do so.
Yes.
If you're a Facebook person, comment on the page or message us. I wish people wouldn't message us too much because I never check that inbox, or tweet us or message us on
Email
Instagram.
us at
All I'm saying is if you listen to every episode, because we've got 100 consistent subscribed listeners and a couple of hundred like casual video watchers is what I would guess it is.
Yeah.
Like even I'm not even saying here's homework, but like shoot us a message and be like, yo, what up? Because I would just love to get a sense of like who these people are. If they have any interest of interacting, that would be my one call to action.
Or if you use the iPhone Apple app for podcast, one of the simplest things people can do to help you is just go click 5 stars.
That's a good point because we don't use Apple. It's a great point though.
But that's what gets you on the charts.
No, you're right. Because we don't use it, I forget to think that because I use Beyond Pod on Android, a different thing.
Didn't you say that we're on Spotify now?
We're not on Spotify.
Oh, what did I thought I heard you say that.
No. It's C's beer podcast. Be Another Shit's on Spotify.
Forget I said
and
that.
when I was chatting with him, he said that they submitted 1 month before us, so he thinks that's good sign for us too.
Shit.
So yeah, the Beer and Other Shit now on Spotify, and us coming soon. And shout out to everybody that we love and everybody that loves us. Peace out, motherfuckers!
Bye.